Chapter 3961. Ning Shu explained what he had been doing all this time. Mountain squatted in front of Ning Shu and listened to Ning Shu. After Ning Shu finished, Mountain nodded and said, "That's good. If it can improve your physique, you can do it. You have to rely on yourself. Others can't help you. I thought you evaporated when I saw you disappear. Instant death. How could Mountain think of that?" Ning Shu held Mountain's pillar-like leg and said, "Mountain, I have a partner. He's my weapon. We've been through life and death together. I don't know where he is now, so I want to find him." Mountain said, "Huh? Life and death together? Partner? Where did that come from? Didn't you follow me when you were born? Did you meet him in the small world?" Ning Shu found that Mountain was not very sensitive when he should be smart, but when he should be vague, he was very sharp. "How am I going to explain my complicated and bitter past to Mountain you?" Ning Shu said, "I want to find a weapon." Mountain nodded in understanding. "Yes, you need a weapon. Otherwise, it'll hurt your hand when you're barehanded." Ning Shu was speechless. Was the point about hurting his hand? Mountain asked, "What weapon do you want?" Ning Shu said without thinking, "A whip." Mountain retorted, "Why a whip? A whip is light and has no strength. Use a hammer. We God Stone Clan all use hammers." Mountain said as he took out a stone hammer from his body and smashed it on the ground. The entire ground shook as if there was an earthquake. "Did you see that? The strength of the hammer is great," Mountain said. Ning Shu said, "Not only do you have defensive power, but you also have offensive power. Coupled with the huge size and strength of the God Stone Clan, this hammer strike was a bit too much for them to bear. Why didn't he take out a big hammer and hit Taishu? Half a jar of honey, my honey." The honey was all left for Fatian. It was very uncomfortable to have it fall heavily into his stomach. Her mouth was filled with a sweet and greasy taste. It was so sweet that she wanted to vomit. However, it was Mountain's choice whether to fight or not. There was no need to have a conflict with someone close to him because of Grand Uncle. "It's all right. Don't tell anyone. Outsiders only know that we're made of stone and don't have any means of attack. We don't fight, so attacking methods are secondary. Getting a weapon is also to prevent people from going too far and beating people up." Ning Shu immediately said, "I won't tell anyone. Don't worry. Every race had their own way of survival. In fact, the Divine Stone race was good at both offense and defense. They were not only good at defense." Shan Yu put the stone hammer back into his body and asked, "Where are you going to find a weapon?" "A whip? It's not easy to find a whip." "I don't know. Maybe we'll run into them if we go out for a walk. Let's go out to avoid them. I have a feeling that Grand Uncle is up to no good. That old man was very bad." Mountain grabbed Ning Shu on his shoulder and said something to his people. Then he left the territory with Ning Shu and began to wander in the void. Ning Shu said, "Let's go to the birthplace of that plane first. I know a dog there. I have to look for it." She was actually given the middle finger by a dog. That dog was just trying to provoke her and make her go find it. She also wanted to give the dog the middle finger, and she wanted to give it the middle finger with both hands. Shan Yu used the tone of an old father and said with gratification, "You've made friends so quickly." "Not bad." It was not bad. She had to go and pinch that dog. Mountain took Ning Shu to the birthplace. Mountain could see far because he was tall, and Ning Shu could see far because he was standing at a high place. From a distance, they saw something lifting its butt and pulling out the whole life. Good, they finally caught the thief. Not only did he pull out the leaves, but now he even pulled out the whole life. He's too much. Fuck. Ning Shu roared, "Thief, look at the stone." He grabbed the broken stones on Mountain and threw them in that direction. The thief carried the huge life and ran away. Mountain immediately ran up and stretched out his gigantic hand to grab Life's soul. The grass thief ran even faster. Ning Shi stepped on Shan Yu's shoulder and used the momentum to charge forward like a cannonball, directly hitting Shengpe. The thief and the life were knocked over by this force. Fa Tian, who had a broken leg, was knocked over several times. He looked at the life, bit his lip, and decided to give up. He turned and ran. Ning Shu looked at the barbarian Fa Tian and was stunned. Seeing that Fa Tian was about to run, he immediately shouted, "Fa Tian, don't run." Fa Tian's footsteps paused. He turned and looked at Ning Shu warily. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" Seeing Shan Yu striding over, he wanted to turn around and run again. Ning Shu quickly grabbed him. "Why are you running?" "I'm Ning Shu. With the help of a peerless martial art, I came back to life." Fa Tian's body stiffened. He stared at Ning Shu with round eyes. "I don't believe you. It's impossible." His voice was choked. After such a long time, he was about to give up hope. His leg couldn't even grow back. Ning Shu said, "You like to eat desserts. You cut off your leg yourself." Fa Tian's mouth twitched. He cried, "You're finally alive. Otherwise, I would be a cripple for the rest of my life. It's too ugly. I don't even have clothes now." Ning Shu said. "It's okay. You can have clothes. You can have a leg. If you appeared a little earlier, the nectar would have gone into your stomach." Ning Shu wanted to dig his throat and vomit the nectar in his stomach to Fa Tian, but it was too disgusting. At this moment, Fa Tian's guilt disappeared. After all, Ning Shu had blocked for him. He had been trying to find a way to revive her, but there was no progress. Now that she was alive, Fa Tian was not only happy, but also relieved. He sat on the ground in a sorry state. His body was covered in mud, his face was dirty, and his hair was also messy. Ning Shu twirled his hair. "Why are you so dirty? No matter what, you have to live a good life. Clean yourself up, and your mental appearance will be different." Fa Tian didn't want to talk about this kind of life anymore. He had to go through wind and rain, climb mountains, and wade through rivers. He didn't care about whether he was clean or not. Fa Tian looked at Ning Shu. "Has your body changed?" Ning Shu said, "They all say that I'm a void cub, but I don't know if it's because my body has changed. However, because my peerless martial arts were damaged, my condition is also very weak." Fa Tian said, "It's good enough that you're alive. Don't ask for anything else. Your body can slowly improve." Previously, he had the ambition to get many good things for the clay Ning Shu. Chapter 3962. And he would never agree to this condition. How could something that they had painstakingly found become someone else's? It seemed that they couldn't come to an agreement. Shan Yu didn't want to take advantage of these people. He just wanted to test them. But what Grand-uncle said next made Shan Yu's face turn green. Grand-uncle said to He, "Take this river." Shan Yu, the Divine Stone Clan, Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at them. "Are you guys pretending to be reasonable with us? Now you want to take the river? What are you doing?" The Divine Stone Clan suddenly felt that they had been fooled. "You guys wanted to take the river in the beginning? Then why did you guys talk for so long? Were you bored out of your mind?" Ning Shu was very calm. If they could really take the Styx River, they would have done so long ago. Why wait until now? And even if they did take the river, how would they deal with it? These were all big problems. It would be convenient to take the Styx River. They wouldn't have to run around in the void. But why didn't the organization take it? The Styx River was very corrosive. Dealing with it was a big problem. The Styx River had existed here for a long time. The soil here could already withstand the Styx River. Did the organization have to send people here to dig mud every day? Rather than that, they might as well leave the Styx River here. Even if the Styx River was taken away, the organization's people would still suffer. Seeing the Divine Stone clan's dumbfounded and petrified expression, Uncle Chang burst into laughter. He was rather carefree. Ning Shu looked at Uncle Chang and thought of the doll he had placed in the City of Water. Uncle Chang had made it beautifully. What are you laughing at? Ning Shu looked at Uncle Chang curiously. What's so funny? Tell us so that we can all be happy. She giggled, revealing two sharp canine teeth. Under the refraction of the light, they were glistening. Uncle Chang was speechless. Was he supposed to say that they looked so silly and funny? He was afraid that he would be attacked by the crowd. He touched his nose awkwardly. Ning Shu sat on Shan Yu's shoulder and leisurely swung his short legs. He said with some interest, "Didn't you want to take away this river? You actually have such an ability? Show us." She looked as if she was sitting below the stage and watching the people on the stage perform. Her round eyes stared at them. Her eyes were clear and filled with curiosity. For a moment, the atmosphere became a little strange. Right now, they were no different from sideshows. Shan Yu also came to his senses. He changed his dumbfounded expression and said with interest and admiration, "You guys are really amazing. You can actually take this river." Heh, the Netherworld River was here. If he changed the location, it was still unknown whether the Netherworld River stone could be formed. The Styx River stone was formed by the right time and place. Once one of them was destroyed, the Styx River stone would no longer be formed. If they were tired, they would end up with something useless. Let's see who's worse. In any case, they had nothing to lose. They didn't have any Styx River stones in the past. At worst, they wouldn't have any Styx River stones in the future. There was no difference. Now, let's see who's more embarrassed. Ha 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 ha, Shan Yu wasn't someone who could keep things in his heart. Right now, he was laughing so hard that his face was scrunched up. Those who didn't know would think that he had encountered something good. This made he and Uncle Chang feel bad. Uncle Chang felt that he had just laughed. Now, the situation had reversed. This girl, Uncle Chang, looked at the smiling Ning Shu. She looked innocent and naive, but his eyes were filled with coldness and hostility. The way the group of big guys were watching a good show at the side was simply intoxicating. Uncle Chang whispered to the Grand Elder, "Are we really going to put it away?" Before they set off, he had brought such a tool with him. But was it really useful to bring the Netherworld River back? This would destroy the original terrain of the Netherworld River. It was very likely that they would go for wool and come home shorn. Although this analogy was very bad, it was true. Settling the Netherworld River was also a big problem. The Grand Elder rubbed his eyebrows and glanced at the Divine Stone race, who were gloating. He felt that these big guys were really annoying. Their hearts were boundless. It was really tiring to fight them. It was too boring. His gaze lingered on Ning Shu for a while. Ning Shu met his gaze. She smiled and clapped her chubby little hands. "Hurry up. If we move it away, maybe a lot of Netherworld River stones will leak out." Without the Netherworld River, the Netherworld River stones at the bottom of the Netherworld River would be exposed. Even if they took away all the Netherworld River stones in the Netherworld River, some would be left behind. They might be able to get a few. Although there weren't many, they were still Netherworld stones. Therefore, the Divine Stone race looked at the Grand Elder and the others like lanterns. They were very bright. Someone even urged, "Hurry up and put away the Netherworld River. Let us see it." They really didn't mind the Grand Elder taking away the Netherworld River at all. They couldn't wait. The Netherworld River was here, and they didn't dare to go down. Even if they guarded the Netherworld River, they might not be able to get the Netherworld River stones at all. But now that the Netherworld River was gone, they would snatch a few Netherworld River stones. Hurry up and do it. What's wrong with you? Are you going back on your words and not taking away the Netherworld River? Everyone was speechless. How did things develop like this? What was going on? Why were they more eager to take away the Netherworld River than they were? Were these big guys completely shameless? What was going on? It was simply intoxicating. Now, the Grand Elder and the others felt like they were being roasted on a rack. If they really tried to take away the Netherworld River, there might not be any benefits. The location of the Netherworld River was also a big problem. But if they didn't take away the Netherworld River, they would lose face. The Grand Elder glanced at Ning Shu and the Divine Stone Race and said, "The Void bestowed the Netherworld River. If I take away the Netherworld River, wouldn't I be violating the Void's bestowment?" Shan Yu said directly, "Shut up. Take it away." The Grand Elder said, "I won't." He suddenly raised his hand and pointed at Ning Shu. "This girl's physique is not good. She's useless with you." Ning Shu was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect the Grand Elder to poach her at this time and focus on her. Shan Yu rolled his eyes. "We were talking about the Netherworld River. Why are you talking about the cub? What do you want?" Shan Yu and his people were a little impatient. Their previous fear of the Grand Elder had turned into impatience. What was he talking about? Can't you just give me a quick answer? Ning Shu was thinking, I'm just a cub with a weak physique. Why did the Grand Elder want to take me in? This was the second time the Grand Elder had said something like this. Ning Shu didn't think the Grand Elder was full of kindness and love for the cub. Chapter 3963. After Shan Yu left, Ning Shu pulled Fa Tian in front of her and looked at him carefully. She then fetched some water for Fa Tian to clean his body. Fa Tian said, "I can do it myself." Ning Shu thought that Fa Tian did not want her to see his broken leg, so she nodded and said, "Okay, you can wash it yourself." She then comforted him, "Don't worry, your leg will definitely grow back." Fa Tian looked at Ning Shu carefully comforting him and said with a grin, "Actually, I don't care that much. You, on the other hand, care a lot. Do I look really ugly without a leg?" Ning Shu hurriedly shook her head to express her attitude, "No, I'm just worried that you'll feel bad. I don't dislike you no matter what you look like. Besides, it's not like your leg won't grow back." Fa Tian nodded, "So, it's not a big deal." On the contrary, he felt unprecedentedly relaxed. She was finally alive, otherwise, he did not know how long she could have held on. It was really too tiring and bitter to carry the burden of life forward. A huge mountain had been removed from his body. Fa Tian only felt happy and relaxed. He did not feel sad at all. It would slowly get better, as long as there was someone here. Ning Shu told Fa Tian everything that had happened since she was born. Fa Tian listened quietly. After she was done, Ning Shu asked Fa Tian, "What have you been doing all this time?" "I've been running around in the void, looking for materials that could stabilize your clay sculpture. In the end, I couldn't revive you." Ning Shu sighed, "It's been hard on you. But I'm in a soul state, not a void creature. I can't be revived." She was not a void creature and did not possess the characteristics of a void creature. The Heaven Punisher could resurrect other void creatures, but he could not resurrect her. She knew that there was no hope, but she was still so persistent. How torturous it must be. Ning Shu rubbed Faishan's head and said, "I'm so touched by your actions. Just thinking about it makes my eyes water again." Fa Tian. "It's not all for you. It's also to make me feel better." Ning Shu chuckled. I know. Fa Tian's expression became more and more serious. "Do you have any contact with Senior Uncle? Did he recognize you?" If he did, then some things can be confirmed. He can confirm that what you have is what they want. Ning Shu waved his hand. They didn't recognize it. It was inevitable that they bumped into it when they were fighting for the life souls. They wouldn't have thought in that direction. Now that he had to develop in a wretched manner, it was useless to say anything without strength. In the face of absolute power, no matter if it was words of justice or words of evil, they could not be spoken. Without strength, so what if he rebuked angrily? It was useless. Fa Tian frowned. So, if I want to stay with you and they find out, it's very likely that they will suspect your identity. Ning Shu had changed his appearance, but he didn't. He couldn't rule out the possibility that he would be caught. Ning Shu, can't we go together because of them? Fa Tian said, I'll leave after a while. Ning Shu quickly asked, where are you going? Fa Tian touched his broken leg. I need to find energy to make my leg grow back. He also needed to be strong. Previously, he wanted to find all kinds of things that could revive Ning Shu. Now, he began to look for energy that could repair his broken leg. You're busy with your own things. Don't tell me you're also busy improving your physique. Let's do our own things. It's useless to stay together. It's a waste of time. Also, you care about my leg a lot. Ning Shu shook his head. I'm not. You're overthinking. Ning Shu felt that Fa Tian's thoughts were normal. It was indeed useless to stay together. They might even be exposed. Now, senior uncle and the others always thought that she was the child of Shan Yu and another man. Okay, but we have to keep in touch. Otherwise, we won't be able to find each other, Ning Shu suggested. You hold a wisp of my consciousness, and I'll hold a wisp of yours. If there's anything urgent, we can contact each other. Fa Tian gave a wisp of his consciousness to Ning Shu. Ning Shu also exchanged their consciousnesses. He solemnly put it away. Whether he could meet Fa Tian again in the future depended on this thing. Ning Shu asked, you really don't need me to spit out the nectar. It was a pity that he had met Fa Tian earlier. He would have poured all the nectar into Fa Tian's stomach. Fa Tian's expression was a bit complicated. Forget it. Leave some for me next time. Ning Shu quickly nodded. I'll definitely leave some for you next time. Let's go catch some birds and make some jerky for you to eat. Apart from this, Ning Shu really didn't know what dry food to get for Fa Tian. Fa Tian nodded, his eyes slightly brightening. That's a good idea. Shan Yu pulled out a fruit tree and threw it in front of Fa Tian. Eat it. Ning Shu felt a pity. How could a good tree be pulled out so easily? He didn't know if it could survive after transplanting. Fa Tian didn't hesitate. He picked the fruit with both hands and stuffed it into his mouth. Ning Shu helped to pick the fruit and put it next to Fa Tian. He could reach out his hand. Fa Tian was full. His complexion looked a bit better, although he still looked like a refugee. Ning Shu still felt that the fair and tender Fa Tian looked good. Fa Tian used to be a child, but now Fa Tian had experienced a lot. He had been wandering for a long time. Between his eyebrows, there was determination and vicissitudes. Ning Shu couldn't bear to look at a little brat with such a vicissitude face. In the days when he wasn't around, he couldn't understand what Fa Tian had gone through. After eating the fruit, Ning Shu took Fa Tian to catch some birds and made some jerky for Fa Tian. Looking at the flock of giant birds, the corners of Fa Tian's mouth curled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. It turned into a black whip. Ning Shu grabbed the whip and wrapped it around the giant birds. The whip tightened, and the giant birds cried out. All the bones in their bodies were broken by the power of the whip. Holding the whip, Ning Shu felt that Fa Tian's strength was different from before. The current Fa Tian seemed to be more powerful. When he threw out the whip, it carried a majestic force, whistling through the air. Although the god-beating whip in the past had the same strength, it wasn't so restrained. It was a kind of power that flowed on the surface. Fation looked pitiful, but in reality, he was much stronger than before. This way, Fation could walk in the void and search for energy without worrying so much. Fation lived until now not because of luck, but because of the strength he gained through experience. Holding the whip, Ning Shu felt that this wasn't the effect of 1 + 1 = 2. It was completely 1 + 1 greater than 2. Her body was weak now. Once her body improved, their combined attack power would definitely be stronger. She became more determined to improve her body. After catching a bunch of giant birds, the next step was to make jerky. Then. Chapter 3964. Then, Ning Shu realized that he did not have the law of water, so he could not absorb the moisture in the bird's meat in an instant. If he dried it naturally, it would take a long time. Fation did not mind. It's okay, we can do it slowly. Anyway, we don't know when we'll meet again. Ning Shu nodded, and the two of them began to make jerky. Shan Yu could not do such delicate work, but his huge body provided a place to dry it. He placed the cooked jerky on Shan Yu and the other Divine Stone clan members. They fell asleep, and when they woke up, the meat was almost dry. The jerky could not be made too dry. If it was too dry, it could not be chewed, and it would be boring. Also, it could train the masseter muscles and become a generous face. Ning Shu did not want Fation to become a generous face. That would be too annoying. Now, Ning Shu was very worried that Fation would become a generous face in the future, because Fation seemed to like eating jerky. It was unimaginable. Ning Shu said to Fation sadly, "You should eat less of such hard things in the future, for the sake of your looks. Although we are all people who have broken away from vulgar tastes, we still like beautiful things, right?" Fation. "I usually keep it in my mouth, I don't chew it," Fation said. Ning Shu thought he was sad, but he also hoped that Fation would chew it in big bites. However, he was worried that Fation's looks were more than his stomach. After all, looking at people was not about looking at their internal organs, but their looks. That's right. If you can keep it in your mouth, don't chew it, or your face won't look good, Ning Shu said. Of course, if you like someone, you would like their face. If not, you would like their internal organs. If he really took out his internal organs, they would be steaming hot and he would spit them out in minutes. Ning Shu touched his cheeks. He had to be more careful in the future, in case he ate too much and turned his face red. He could not eat things that were too hard to chew. So what if he was strong? There were ugly people in the void as well. Fation was silent for a while. "If I'm not good looking, you won't even look at me." "You can't say that. Even if you're really not good looking, after a long time, my brain will automatically beautify your existence. You're good looking in my heart, but that might not be the case in other people's hearts." Fation. She really didn't dare to eat anymore. Ning Shu pried Fation's mouth open and looked around. No cavities, no tooth loss. You haven't lost your baby teeth yet. And it was this kind of tiny teeth. Don't look down on looks. Things like looks can be added bit by bit. You can't look down on details. The meat jerky was almost dry, so it was time to put it all in the messen space. He also put a lot of water in the messen space. This way, he would have something to quench his thirst when he was thirsty. When everything was ready, it was time to leave. Before leaving, Ning Shu found a lot of fruits for Fation. "It's enough. You don't have to get more. There's plenty of food in the void." Fation said. "I'm leaving. Be careful. When you meet them, run if you can. Don't fight them head on. I survived this time. If it happens again, I'm afraid I won't be so lucky. Ning Shu nodded. I know, I understand. You know that I've always been a picky person. I won't joke around with my life. Be careful outside. Will you go to the Holy Land? Ning Shu asked. Fatan, the Holy Land. I haven't been there since that incident. But I still have to go back and see the old man. I still have to ask the old man about my broken leg. The old man has lived for so long. He must know something. Be careful when you go to the Holy Land. Don't get caught. Maybe they don't care about you now, but you can't be careless. Ning Shu reminded. The two of them repeated the same words over and over again. After talking for a long time, they still didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. Shan Yu asked, are you still going? Why don't you stay for a while longer? Fatan shook his head. He looked up at Shan Yu and said, thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for taking care of Ning. Nectar. Shan Yu didn't care at all. With or without her, it's the same. She doesn't affect me much. She doesn't cause me much trouble. Fatan said, no matter what, she's been taken care of by you. Then he turned to Ning Shu and said, if you can solve something yourself, don't trouble others. It's a waste of feelings. The moment he opened his mouth, he was asking for favors. Once or twice, feelings would be exhausted one day. Ning Shu. I know. I know the ways of the world. Fatan said, oh. He glanced at Ning Shu. Perhaps it was because she was too young now. She was still a child. He couldn't help but give her a few more words of advice. Appearances were too deceiving. Even if he knew in his heart that Ning Shu was an adult in the past, he would naturally have the mature look of an adult. But it was different when he was a child. Fatan tidied himself up. He waved at Ning Shu and left without looking back. He turned into a small black dot. Ning Shu stood on his tiptoes and waved. He felt a little melancholy. When a child grew up, he would eventually have his own world. Although Fatan was a weapon had a mind of its own, just like a human. He was a living creature. There was nothing in the world that could be forced. A person's heart couldn't be forced. At most, it could change. Ning Shu hoped that he and Fatan wouldn't be like the sand that Jean clutched tightly in his hand. The tighter he clutched, the faster he would lose it. If there were no accidents, he would spend a lot of time in the small world in the future. Was he going to let Fatan follow him to the small world? Besides, the benefits of Fatan following him to the small world were too small. There was no need at all. So when Fatan wanted to leave, Ning Shu agreed without hesitation. He sincerely hoped that Fatan would have a bright future. He hoped that Fatan's legs would grow back. Shan Yu comforted Ning Shu. If you don't have this weapon, you can change to another one. Ning Shu shook his head. Actually, it's not a problem with the weapon. It's just that parting is always melancholy. It's okay. You'll get used to it after a few more parting. I have to leave the territory every time, and the people are already used to it. They won't be reluctant to part with me, Shan Yu said. Ning Shu was speechless. This seemed a little different. They parted like this because there was no hope of them returning. If something happened to Fatan, they probably wouldn't be able to see each other for the rest of their lives. But when Shan Yu went out, it was completely like he was bored at home. He went out for a walk and could return home at any time. However, Ning Shu still said, "You're right. It's like that." He didn't have any tools or ingredients on hand. He couldn't make any desserts for Fatan. Fatan loved sweets the most. When he went to the small world in the future, he definitely had to bring some cooking tools and ingredients from the small world. When it comes to eating, the void creatures aren't as reliable as us humans. The study of food is endless. Chapter 3965. However, it was okay to coax those who didn't know about them. But even if they went, they would investigate. Once they did, they would be exposed. However, they didn't steal or rob. How could they wear a fake diamond necklace? Ning Shu drove directly to the city hall and found a staff member. He said that they had found a way to suppress the virus. Although the staff member didn't believe it, he still took Ning Shu and the others to see the leader. Zheng Xian was a little nervous. After all, he was just a 20-year-old young man. It was inevitable for him to be nervous in this situation. However, when he saw Ning Shu walking in front of him in her high heels, it was as if the staff member was leading the way for her. Zheng Xian felt a little relieved. The others followed behind Zheng Xian. Obviously, Zheng Xian was the leader at this time. Zheng Xian hugged the folder. His palms were sweaty, and so was his back. It was sticky and very uncomfortable. Soon, they arrived at the office. Ning Shu walked in very rhythmically. The man on the desk raised his head and asked, "Madam, what's the matter?" Madam was usually addressed as a married woman from a rich family. Ning Shu nodded. Zheng Xian immediately handed the document to him. Ning Shu said, "Please take a look at this document." The man was a little puzzled, but he still looked at it. However, his face became more and more serious. Ecstasy flashed across his face. He questioned, put down the folder and asked, "Is this true?" Zheng Xian, as the leader of this group, naturally had to stand up and say, "It's true. We have conducted many experiments. You can also experiment." "Wait, I'll make a call." The man quickly acted and asked the people outside to pour tea for Ning Shu and the others. Ning Shu didn't drink tea. No one knew how many people had drunk these cups. It was not clean. Now was the time for the virus to spread. She might be infected. After all, she was a cannon fodder. If she was infected, it would be great if her consciousness left this world. However, Sun Hongying's entire family could be infected. Although Zheng Xian and the others had already discovered the ingredients of the special medicine, it would still take a long time before the finished product was ready. Their family couldn't afford to wait. In any case, he had occupied Sun Hongying's body for a few years. It could be said that he had seized Sun Hongying's light and shadow for a few years in vain. This matter was related to the people's livelihood. Even if this matter was fake, at this time, the higher-ups were in a terrible fix because of this virus. That was definitely a joyous occasion. Soon, someone came over and took the folder away. Obviously, they were going to redo the experiment based on the information in the folder. If it was really useful, it would be put into production very soon. Ning Shu waited idly and did not drink any tea. When the others saw that Ning Shu did not drink any tea, they naturally did not move. Moreover, they were nervous. Now, he only wanted to go to the toilet. How could he want to drink water? The laboratory quickly started to operate according to the data and things in the document. The atmosphere was very tense. Everyone in the laboratory was waiting for the results. The results of the experiment were the same. Immediately, they cheered. One of the slightly older researchers said, "Why didn't we think of that? I heard that those who came were only university students." University students? The eyes of the researchers present were rolling. They stared at the experimental report very enviously. This would be an unprecedented honor. It would save the honor of many people. Academic plagiarism existed everywhere. Moreover, those were only university students. Therefore, the researchers in the laboratory rushed over and stared at Zheng Xian and the others. Zheng Xian and the others were very reserved. They were still university students, but these people were already serious researchers. Ning Shu clicked her tongue. The sharp soles of her high heels stepped on the ground, making a crisp sound. Tell me if you have anything to say. Ning Shu faced these researchers. The researchers looked at Ning Shu. They were intimidated by her aura. Then, they looked at the dazzling diamond necklace. The confidence in their hearts to buy it with money was not so strong. The older researcher said, "Did you come up with these research results from your experiments?" Xing Xian gritted his teeth. This was obviously their work. What was there to be afraid of? He stood up and said, "We came up with it. Here's the thing. Our Senkei Research Institute feels that the results of this experiment are not satisfactory. There is still a chance for improvement. However, these are the results of your hard work. We don't want to use your experimental results. So, we're going to give you 5 million to sell this to us. How about we do it tonight?" Ning Shu clicked her tongue. This was a great honor. It was reasonable for these researchers to want to buy it. However, they wanted the title of a savior for 5 million. Moreover, they could make more money by making drugs. 5 million to buy an egg that could lay a golden egg. They should at least pay a higher price. Moreover, once something was linked to the country, it would be smooth sailing. It was as if the heavens were helping them. Getting the support of the country would have a rocket-like effect. Compared to Ning Shu's calmness and even rolling her eyes, Xing Xian and the others breathed a little faster and opened their mouths to offer 5 million. Xing Xian looked at Ning Shu and saw that his aunt did not seem to think much of it. Obviously, she felt that the money was too little. He immediately calmed down. Even his aunt, who had always loved money, did not care about this amount of money. This meant that the price was indeed too low. Xing Xian said, "Sorry, we're not selling it. This is to be handed over to the country to save more people. If the country wants to give this task to your research institute, we have no objections." The researcher frowned and said, "If you buy this out to our laboratory, you can participate in the research. Even if other people had already figured out something, it would be a great charity for them to use their things and give them some money to let them participate in the research." This thing was something that they had worked hard to develop. Ning Shu said, "Then whose name should this research result be under? If you buy it out to us, it'll naturally belong to Senkei." Xing Xian decisively handed the document to the leader in the office. "We'll hand this over to the country. We don't want any rewards. We just want our names to be on this thing." When the leader saw how anxious researcher Senkei was, he knew that this was probably true. Hence, he said with a smile, "Don't worry, I'll report this to the higher-ups right away. If it's yours, it'll be yours. The country has seen and remembered what you've done." Xing Xian let out a long sigh. "That's great. The information I took can be passed down to future generations. I'm also someone who has contributed to the country." The leader's expression froze. In the end, he did not say anything. Ning Shu thought, "You're really smart. You even know how to threaten me." The counterattack of the supporting cannon fodder. The counterattack of the supporting cannon fodder. Chapter 3966. If he didn't know how to ask, why did he have to make trouble for others now? How could there be such a shameless person in the world? Mo Ming, who was greeted by everyone's gaze, was speechless. When Shan Yu saw the stick stone in Mo Ming's hand, he felt uncomfortable. How did he find it? He wanted to snatch it away. Mo Ming saw Ning Shu, whose face was black and red. His skin was burnt and his flesh could be seen. He quickly took 2 steps forward, then stopped and asked, "You're injured?" Ning Shu didn't want to speak because it hurt. And he breathed a sigh of relief. Because of Mo Ming's appearance, the atmosphere was not so tense. It was as if a string had been broken. He was relieved. Probably because of Mo Ming's beauty, this little girl wouldn't do anything to him. Mo Ming said to He, "Do you have any medicine on you? Let this mushroom cool down." He was speechless. It was true that girls were extroverted. And he shook his head and said, no, there should be some medicine in the organization. Ning Shu ignored Mo Ming and then he jumped onto Shan Yu's shoulder and said to him, let's go back. She did find some stick stones, but she would never show them in front of them. She shouldn't show off her wealth. Mountain turned around and left. Step by step, his footsteps caused the ground to tremble slightly as he left. And he couldn't help but stare at Mo Ming. Was Mo Ming really so beautiful that he could get what he wanted with his beauty? Why was that unreasonable little witch so tolerant of him? From a man's perspective, and he was indeed handsome, but he was not at the level of being seductive. And he touched his face. He didn't look bad either. Why didn't he encounter such a good thing? He also wanted to use his beauty to turn misfortunes into blessings. Those who were lucky were really lucky. Mo Ming saw that and he was staring at him strangely. He handed the stone in his hand over and said, I want to go back and get some medicine. And he took the stick stone and waved his hand. He said irritably, let's go, he didn't need to think to know who the medicine was for. If Mo Ming could build a good relationship with this race, it would also be beneficial. Otherwise, these people would stare at them with their boss eyes every time they came. Mo Ming left without another word. And he sighed. Boys are also extroverted. She was just a little girl. On the way back home, Shan Yu could not help but ask, what happened to you? How did you get hurt so badly? This was no longer a blister. His skin had been damaged. The previous blisters were nothing compared to this. Ning Shu took a deep breath and said, I ran a little far. My clothes were torn when I came back. Shan Yu sighed. Why are you working so hard? Ning Shu took out a pile of stick stones. Look. Shan Yu turned his head and glanced at it casually. Then, he widened his eyes and looked around like a thief. Put it away quickly. Don't let anyone see it. This was the first time he had seen so many Styx River stones. How exciting. That kind of excitement was definitely like having a big box of cash in front of you. Shan Yu asked anxiously, you were too late to find these stones. Ning Shu said, yeah, I was lucky. He could not imagine what he looked like now. His arms and body were all burnt, not to mention his face. He was fucking disfigured. Ning Shu felt that he should use the earth method next time. He should use the mud from the swamp and sand from the beach. This kind of prop was not very sturdy. If one part of it was broken, it would be over. Water would be poured into it. With that kind of mud, if one part of it was broken, it would only damage the skin in that part. Ning Shu counted the stones. There were 24 of them. The small ones were very small, only the size of a finger. The big ones were actually the size of a basin. It was so irregular that it took some effort for Ning Shu to hide these stones. Although he had obtained the stones, Ning Shu was still a little depressed. He asked Shan Yu, how do you think we should divide these stones? If there were not enough stones, some people would be able to get it, while others would not. Moreover, the sizes were not the same. This was bound to cause some people to get bigger stones, while others would get smaller stones. It was a troublesome matter to not worry about the scarcity but about the uneven distribution. Shan Yu was a little surprised. He asked, are you going to distribute these stones to my people? Ning Shu said, what else? Why would I want these stones? To throw them at people. Shan Yu thought for a moment and said, you don't have to give them. Just keep them. If anyone needs one, just give one. If not, don't give one. They are so lazy all the time. Ning Shu thought for a moment and handed the stick stones to Shan Yu. Then keep them. When we have collected more than 100 stones, everyone will have one. Shan Yu shook his head. Forget it. It's too dangerous to go down. As for this thing, it was luck that we got it. Don't work too hard. You don't have to do too much. Don't worry, even if you don't do anything, we won't chase you away. We can still raise a cub. Shan Yu felt that Ning Shu was working so hard because she was a cub and had no tribe. She was afraid that they would abandon her, so she felt insecure. She worked so hard to please them. Sigh, she was such a pitiful cub. Ning Shu was speechless. Although he didn't know what Shan Yu was thinking, Ning Shu didn't plan to go down the river for a long time because his skin hadn't recovered. Ning Shu was a little worried. He was afraid that his skin couldn't recover to its previous state. He had to go back and eat something to nourish his skin. Shan Yu put away the stick stones and said to Ning Shu, "Don't worry, I will take good care of this thing. As for your skin, do you want me to find Ji-Er and ask him for something to treat your burns?" Ji-Er lived in the lush forest. The lush forest was too big and difficult to find. It was also very dangerous. There were many tribes living there. Ning Shu didn't think that Shan Yu would be able to come back if he went directly to the lush forest. As for the injuries on his body, Ning Shu would find a way to deal with it himself. His face was injured, and Ning Shu valued his face more than anyone else. Shan Yu said again, "Do you want to find a fish and let it heal you?" Ning Shu shook his head. "No need." Shan Yu asked, "Then what do you think?" Ning Shu said, "I think that I can recover with my body's self-healing ability." If he really couldn't do it, he could go to the unique martial arts school. Although the unique martial arts school was a deformed child now, it still had some power. He didn't believe that he would become an ugly person in the future. Shan Yu made a sound of surprise, obviously disagreeing. "There's still a way to go before we reach the tribe. You go back by yourself, I will go find a fish." He put Ning Shu on the ground and turned to leave without waiting for Ning Shu to say anything. The Canon Fodder Female Supporting Character Counterattack. Chapter 3967. Ning Shu didn't stop him. After all, it was related to his looks. It was good to have a doctor. Ning Shu returned to the tribe alone. The tribe members who hadn't slept saw Ning Shu in such a sorry state and immediately asked, "What happened to you? Where's Shan Yu?" The lazy-looking tribe member sat up straight and asked Ning Shu, "Did something happen to Shan Yu?" For example, the Divine Stone tribe had never lost a tribe member. If something really happened to Shan Yu, it would be a great loss to the tribe. Moreover, they had been together for a long time. Ning Shu quickly explained, "He's fine. I fell into the Styx River and my skin became like this. He went to find fish." The tribe member immediately nodded and relaxed. He said, "How did you fall into the Styx River? Wasn't Shan Yu watching you?" Ning Shu said, "I went into the river to touch the Styx River stone. I was careless and became like this." The tribe member said, "Why did a cub like you go into the river?" "We didn't go into the river." "Why did you go into the river?" Ning Shu was speechless. "Even if you were sleeping or strolling, you would never go into the river. Go down and look for fish." Ning Shu said obediently, "Yes, I know. I won't fall into the river next time." The tribe member nagged Ning Shu a little more. Seeing that there was nothing else, he lazily went back to sleep. Ning Shu returned to the place where he cultivated in seclusion. He took out the fruits given by the sharp-eared tribe and ate some of them. There were also detoxifying fruits. Ning Shu smelled the rotten skin on his arm. He felt that the Styx River was poisonous and needed to eat something to detoxify it. There was a burnt smell and the smell of barbecued meat. Needless to say, Ning Shu was a little craving for meat. Shan Yu hadn't returned. He was quite a distance away from the Donglan Sea. Ning Shu made a comfortable bed for himself and planned to sleep. Just as he fell asleep, his consciousness floated into the ultimate martial art. He was swimming comfortably inside when a tribe member's voice sounded outside. "Cub, are you inside?" Someone is looking for you outside. Ning Shu returned to his body and walked away. He was a little grumpy after being woken up. Holding his breath, he asked, "Who's looking for me?" Did he not know that disturbing someone's sleep was a very immoral thing to do? He had just fallen asleep, his consciousness was in the sea of law, and he could not feel any pain in his body. But as soon as he woke up, he felt a burning pain all over his body. At first, he only felt pain. Now, the symptoms seemed to be more serious. His entire body was burning up. It was probably due to a fever. As expected, the Styx River was slightly poisonous. Now, he had a headache and a fever. When he woke up, he felt dizzy and his mood was even worse. Ning Shu walked out of the cave and asked, "Who's looking for me?" She was baffled as to why someone was looking for her. She didn't even know anyone. The clansman blocking the entrance of the cave pointed in that direction. Ning Shu followed his finger and saw Mo Ming. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and pulled at the wound on his face, causing him to gasp in pain. Mo Ming looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu walked over and asked coldly, "Why are you looking for me?" Ning Shu looked at Mo Ming with a cold and unfamiliar gaze. This was normal, because as a creature living in the void, it was normal not to recognize Mo Ming. Mo Ming took out a bottle and handed it to Ning Shu. She said, "I saw that you were injured, so I gave you some medicine." Ning Shu stared at the bottle. "Why are you giving me medicine?" Mo Ming said, "Take it as repayment for saving my life. This is the best medicine I made for you. Try it." Ning Shu nodded and took the bottle. "Saving you was something I did in passing. I don't need you to repay me. To you, it's something you did in passing. To me, it's something that saved my life. It's very important to me." Mo Ming did not get angry because he said it was something he did in passing. They were not related to each other. She just helped him. "I'll take your medicine. Don't mention saving my life in the future. It's so mushy. I have goosebumps all over." Ning Shu curled his lips. "Do you have anything else? If not, you can leave." Mo Ming saw that Ning Shu's face was swollen. The burn wound was red and swollen, and water was seeping out. She could not help but ask, "Didn't you treat your wound?" "I'm waiting for someone to come back." Ning Shu did not think that Shan Yu was making a fuss about finding carp. The wound on his body did need to be treated. If it was not treated, it would get worse. Ning Shu did not dare to be stubborn when it came to his looks. Although he did not want to admit that the item was of inferior quality, it did have a weakness. It could not last for long. If he went a little further, something would happen. However, if he searched in that place, no matter how many Styx River stones there were, they would all be found. Mo Ming clicked her tongue. She hesitated and said, "Do you want me to help you apply some?" "Don't worry. This medicine is the right medicine." Back then, a soul was corroded by the Styx River and could not be stopped. This was the medicine used. When Ning Shu heard this, he had some confidence in the medicine. Now, he had no confidence at all. One is a soul, and the other is a body of flesh and blood. "Are you sure this is the right medicine?" Ning Shu's face twitched as he spoke. It hurt even more. Mo Ming looked at Ning Shu's ferocious face. She could not bear to look at it and looked away. She hesitated and said, "It should be the right medicine." However, Ning Shu was indeed in pain. He passed the bottle to Mo Ming and said, "Help me apply it." Just apply it. Ning Shu felt that his skin was very important. He definitely could not apply it on his face. Finally, he lifted his leg and said, "Apply it to my calf." Mo Ming looked at his badly corroded calf and said, "You can apply it yourself." She was afraid that the medicine she brought was not enough. Ning Shu raised his hand. His fingers were also corroded. "It's not easy. Didn't you say that you would apply the medicine for me? Mo Ming was a little helpless. She took the bottle. Ning Shu sat down and put his leg on a stone. Apply it. Mo Ming was about to apply the medicine when Ning Shu suddenly shouted. Mo Ming was so frightened that her hand trembled. What's wrong? I haven't applied it yet. Ning Shu said, I shouted in advance so that you could be mentally prepared. Be gentle. If it hurts too much, I might hit you. Mo Ming was very helpless. She felt like she was facing an unreasonable child. She was indeed a child. Mo Ming started to apply the medicine and gently covered the wound. Ning Shu felt a cooling sensation at first. Then, he felt a burning sensation. It was as if a handful of chili was sprinkled on his face. It burned even more. Oh my God! What kind of torture was this? Was the medicine so strong? Ning Shu immediately cried out, Don't apply it, it hurts like hell. Luckily, she did not apply it on his face. If she did, his face would have been ruined. The counterattack of the cannon fodder supporting female lead. Chapter 3968. Although Zheng Xian was still studying, there were already many well-known research institutes that had already extended an olive branch to him. However, Zheng Xian did not agree to any of them. His reason was that he still needed to study and had no intention of working for the time being. When some research institutes heard this reason, they gave up. Some research institutes were probably desperate for fame and directly gave Zheng Xian a very generous reward. He would receive a salary every month and would not have to work. After graduation, he would be able to enter the research institute. The treatment was very good. When Zheng Xian heard such generous conditions, he was stunned. He would receive a salary even if he did not have to work. After graduation, he would not even have to worry about his job. He would be able to study peacefully and would not have to worry about money. Of course, there was a price to pay. If he was not strong enough, even if he entered the research institute, he would still be kicked out. It would be too embarrassing to pack up and leave with his tail between his legs. Zheng Xian went home and discussed it with Ning Shu. Zheng Jiqiang was very happy and felt that Zheng Xian could accept it. After graduation, he would have a job and stability. It was best to have everything stable. Of course, stability also meant that there was no freedom. Freedom was never stability. Ning Shu said bluntly, What does it have to do with me whether you earn money or not? You won't give me the money. Zheng Jiqiang heard his wife's sour words and said to Zheng Xian, Your aunt is like this. Zheng Xian sometimes felt that his uncle should not have said anything. So what if it was like this? Should other people just endure it? His tone was exactly like a naughty parent. Of course, Zheng Xian's tolerance for his aunt was very, very low. Of course, he did not care about these words. He still asked, Aunt, what do you think I should choose? The research institute's remuneration was very generous, so Zheng Xian was very tempted and wanted to ask Ning Shu's opinion. Ning Shu, why are you asking me? If you want to go, then go. If you don't want to go, then don't go. It's your own business. Don't blame me if you regret it in the future. Strictly speaking, we're not your guardians anymore. Your achievements are higher than ours. Don't ask for our opinions if you don't have anything to do. Our lives are just enough to eat and wear. As for other things, our brains are small and we can't give any effective opinions. So, don't ask me, I don't know. Moreover, the real Sun Hongying was just an ordinary woman. She didn't have much foresight and her vision was relatively narrow. Now that Zheng Xian was used to asking for her opinion, it would lead Zheng Xian into a ditch. Moreover, Zheng Xian's attitude was too good. He was afraid that others would take advantage of him. His honor was a business opportunity to make money. If Zheng Xian didn't have the glory, the research institute would be stupid to treat a university student like Zheng Xian so generously. Of course, ordinary university students wouldn't receive such treatment. Although Zheng Xian didn't hear Ning Shu's opinion, he wasn't disappointed. He was used to Ning Shu's epilepsy and sarcastic remarks from time to time. It was probably because of the patent incident that made him a little dependent on his aunt. He wouldn't do it in the future. Moreover, this was his own life. Zheng Xian was a little scared. He almost handed the right to choose his own life to someone else. Zheng Xian rejected the research institute. His reply was calm and gentle. In short, he thanked them for their kindness and wanted to study seriously. The research institute had no choice. They couldn't force him. They couldn't use the same method to recruit other people. However, two people agreed. It was reasonable to agree because the benefits were really good. The virus was under control. Even if it was really infected, there was a special medicine. So far, the virus hadn't developed resistance to the special medicine. The effect was very good. When Ning Shu was resting and relaxing, the soul hidden in his body suddenly struggled. It was obviously fighting for the control of his body. Ning Shu's consciousness was drawn out of his body. It was obvious that he was about to leave this world. With this, Sun Hongying's body regained control of her body. Ning Shu's consciousness left the world and soaked in the sea water. Then, it returned to his body. When he woke up, he touched his face. There was a layer of dust on his face. Did he stay in that world for a long time? Ning Shu felt that he should buy a sleeping bag or a tent. Otherwise, his face would be covered in dust every time he woke up. He raised his hand and looked at his wrist. Compared to last time, his meridians were about 4 centimeters longer. They were slowly absorbing energy. Out of the cave, rows of God's Stone clan members were sleeping soundly. Occasionally, they would turn over and bump into other people. Anyway, Ning Shu admired the God's Stone clan's big heart. They could eat and sleep soundly even after the birth of a natural enemy race. As long as the natural enemy race wasn't in front of them. Ning Shu found a pool and rubbed the dust off his body. The dirt flowed into the water. It was very refreshing. Ning Shu looked around but didn't find Shan Yu. Shan Yu was different from the other clansmen. Probably because he had fused with the Styx River stone, he was darker than the other clansmen. It was easy to tell. Shan Yu probably went out for a walk. Ning Shu had nothing to do. He prepared to go to the Styx River stone. He wanted to make the God's Stone clan's body harder. Maybe Jin Ji, who had been baptized by delicious food, wouldn't want to eat the hard God's Stone clan. He smeared the smelly sludge on his body and started to swim down the river. Ning Shu didn't plan to explore nearby. He had already explored most of the nearby areas and didn't gain anything. So, he wanted to swim further away. But he had to be fast. Ning Shu desperately oiled himself in the river. However, with the dry sludge on his body, he couldn't swim fast. The bolder one's heart was, the greater the yield. Ning Shu swam further away and collected a small pile of Styx River stones. However, his skin was still burned. But it was much better than wearing the clothes given by Fragrant Wind Guy. After washing, his skin was red. Every time he was scalded like a pig, he would meet people he didn't want to see. And he looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at him from the corner of his eyes. "What are you looking at?" And he thought, female warrior. Ning Shu saw that and he had brought another group of people over. "What's going on? Why are you here again? I thought that after what happened last time, you wouldn't be so thick-skinned and come here again. Can you be more shameless?" And he was indifferent to Ning Shu's words. He didn't want to listen. Ning Shu pursed his lips. He didn't care about An-He. According to An-He's protective clothing, they could only wander around. If they ran far away, they would definitely end up like her last time. They would be burned to a crisp. Their souls were even more fragile. They would probably disappear with a puff of smoke. He went to look for some food. Shan Yu had gone somewhere and hadn't returned yet. The fruits at the entrance of the cave had already rotted. There was no fresh food. It was obvious that Shan Yu had been out for a long time. He was a little hungry now. Ning Shu touched his face. He felt that he had lost weight. As long as her consciousness left her body would become a corpse. Chapter 3969. Carp examined it carefully and even sniffed it. He used his fingernail to pick up a bit and put it in his mouth to taste. It was like a farmer trying to taste all kinds of herbs. Ning Shu was speechless. Mo Ming was speechless. This thing was quite dirty. Carp had a bad temper, but he was very dedicated to his job and was very serious about this kind of thing. After a while, Carp said, "You can use it. There's some good stuff inside." Mountain asked, "If you use this, will it leave a scar?" Carp's face twitched for a moment, and he said angrily, I don't know. Mountain sighed and said to Ning Shu in a melancholy tone, "See, I told you to be careful. Why don't I go to the lush forest?" Although the sharp-eared tribe was not very strong, they were quite good-looking when they grew up. There were many strange fruits and spring water in their tribe. Maybe the cub would not have any scars after eating these things. Cub loved to look good, so it would not be good to have scars. Moreover, it was to find the Styx stone. Ning Shu shook his head. "Don't go. The lush forest is too dangerous." When Carp heard that Mountain was going to the lush forest, he could not help but cast a sidelong glance. His expression was obviously suspicious. However, it was none of his business, so Carp did not express any opinions. He only said, "Is there anything else? If not, I'm leaving." Mountain slapped his head and said to Carp embarrassedly, "I was in too much of a hurry. I didn't prepare anything for you. I'll send it to you when I find something good next time." Mountain realized that he really did not have anything valuable on him. The only thing he had was the Styx stone that his cub had just found. If he gave it to Carp, it would definitely smash his head. Therefore, it was better to put it on credit and give it to Carp when he found something strange. Carp's expression froze. He was very unhappy. "Don't call me if you don't have anything. I'll give you something before I treat you." Mountain scratched his head and said with a smile, Okay. Carp was speechless, but he still said, "Don't run around if you don't have anything to do. Don't stand in the wind. Don't wash your wounds with water. It will destroy the healing process." Ning Shu nodded. "I know. Thank you, Mr. Carp." The Carp was speechless. Ning Shu asked again, "Will I have a scar?" Carp didn't know how many times he had heard the question of whether it would leave a scar. He said in exasperation, "No, it won't." Ning Shu replied, Okay. Why are you so angry?" The doctor's temper was a little irritable, and the doctor-patient relationship would be very tense. The Carp was speechless. After sending the Carp away, Mountain came back and saw his cub talking to the soul. He rolled his eyes and walked over to ask, "What are you talking about? You look so happy." Ning Shu. Was she happy? She was clearly unhappy. Ning Shu said, "I told him the medicine was useful and asked him to get me some more." Shan Yu nodded, but his face was still gloomy. He said in a strange tone, "You're quite right." Of course, Mo Ming knew that Mountain was against him. He looked at him like he was guarding against a thief, afraid that he would do something wrong. What could he do? He couldn't do anything. Not to mention that he couldn't defeat the cub that Mountain cared about, he was also under the gaze of so many tall people. That was why he was so crazy. However, Mountain was not an unreasonable person. You are also a person who knows how to repay kindness. Okay, you can go. Mo Ming cupped his hands and said goodbye to Ning Shu. Ning Shu said to him, "Don't forget to give me the medicine and mirror." After thinking for a while, Ning Shu took out some fruits. "I'll use these fruits to exchange for them." Mo Ming needed either merit or power of faith to exchange for this medicine. It would definitely cost money. There was no reason for Mo Ming to spend money for no reason. Mo Ming had earned his merits and faith power by risking his life to do so. Shang Mo Ming naturally refused. "No need. I still have this bit of merit." Ning Shu's face was cold. "What does it have to do with me whether you have merit or not?" Seeing that Ning Shu was so polite, Mountain said to Mo Ming angrily, "Just take it." "Why are you nagging?" Ning Shu was speechless. Mo Ming was so angry. He was here to give him something, but he was treated as if he was here to collect a debt. Mo Ming took the fruit and put it in his space. "Then I'll shamelessly accept it." Mountain said, "You're quite shameless." Mo Ming took the fruit and left. Ning Shu asked Mountain, "Why do I feel that you don't like him?" "Shan Yu said, I can almost see the scene of you being tricked away. You look so silly." Ning Shu was a little speechless. "No way. How could I be tricked away?" Mountain was surprised. He didn't believe it, but he didn't say anything about Mo Ming. In the end, Mo Ming was just a soul. He couldn't do anything. If the cub really liked him, it wasn't impossible to catch him and play with him. He was just a creature in the small world. It couldn't be helped. Void creatures treated the creatures in the small world like cats and dogs. They could be kept as pets. They could also be used as tools like Taishu and the others. As a creature in the small world, Ning Shu felt a little guilty. She was a creature born from peerless martial arts. She couldn't be counted as a void creature. Everyone thought of her as a void creature's cub, but she didn't deny or admit it. She didn't care what they thought. It didn't matter what she was. What mattered was that it felt so good to be alive. "Go stay in the cave. Didn't the fish say that you can't be exposed to the wind now?" After Mountain finished speaking, he yawned. He was tired and went to sleep. Ning Shu returned to the small cave and applied all the medicine that Mo Ming gave her. She felt as if her whole body was marinated in chili sauce. She felt like she was burning up. After the spiciness passed, there was a cool and refreshing feeling. Ning Shu also fell into a deep sleep. His consciousness drifted as he swayed and entered into the world of peerless martial arts. It was so comfortable to swim in the ocean. It was as if she was back in amniotic fluid. Although she was floating, she felt very safe. It was the same feeling as soaking in the Styx River. She could relax completely here. It was the safest place in the world. Ning Shu's body started to recover slowly in this deep sleep. It was because of the medicine and the peerless martial arts. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, Ning Shu was suddenly awakened. The reason was that Shan Yu saw that she had slept for too long and woke her up. Mountain looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. "How can you sleep like this? You've woken up so many times, but you didn't wake up at all. Could it be that something went wrong?" Chapter 3970. The first thing that came to their minds was that someone was using the black fog to give birth to the cubs. Or was the birth of the cubs a conspiracy? However, their senses would not be wrong because there was indeed a race being born here. The black fog surged even more violently, and the attacks became more frequent. And he and Mo Ming were also in a difficult situation. They took out all kinds of items to defend against the attacks. The other souls were getting fewer and fewer under such attacks. It was only a matter of time before they were all wiped out. With the help of the items, and he and Mo Ming were also in a bad situation. Everyone was caught like a turtle in a jar. Ning Shu closed his eyes and emptied his mind. He tried to use his mind power to check the situation. Although the black fog could devour mind power, it also needed time to do so. This required the flexibility of mind power. Most of the mind power that Ning Shu released was devoured, so he could only release it again and again. After being tempered by the black fog, his mind power became slightly more solid. At least around the mountain, he could see a little more clearly. Around the mountain, there were flashes of light in the black fog. The light was like sword light, hitting the mountain's body. Someone was hiding in the black fog and using the black fog as a tool to attack everyone present. It was really a passive attack. It was very annoying. They were here to eat, but it was so troublesome to eat. The black fog churned, but it soon began to disperse, forming small clusters of light that shone into the canyon. The people shrouded in the black fog were suddenly illuminated by the strong light, and they all reflexively squinted their eyes. Without the black fog, Ning Shu's mind power was not obstructed. It crawled out of the mountain's ear and looked at the situation in the air. In the air, the thick black fog turned into balls. Countless balls of black fog surged and wriggled. There seemed to be something inside. It gave people a disgusting feeling. As expected, the void creatures who saw this showed a look of disgust. They were here to eat, but the appearance of things affected their appetite. Such a wriggling thing, and it was black, really made people lose their appetite. Without the black fog shrouding them, everyone's situation could be seen clearly. Many of them had injuries on their bodies. There were scratches on their faces as if they had been cut by something. Ning Shu thought of the flashes of light in the black fog. Those flashes of light were the result of an attack. In the air, the black fog was still wriggling. It slowly extended and elongated, forming many humanoid creatures. These creatures were completely in the form of mist. They had no physical body and no facial features. The smoke-like creature was completely in human form with a slender body. Obviously, it was not a cub. Ning Shu was speechless. Heh, everyone at the scene was screwed over. This time, it wasn't a cub that was born. It didn't even have a physical body. Ning Shu guessed that even if he used a weapon to cut it open, it probably wouldn't have any effect on the smoke and it could condense again. Fuck, this kind of physique is really invincible. Weapons were useless against this type of physique. At most, they would disperse the smoke, but the smoke could gather again. It was similar to Zhengqing's state, but Zhengqing was too weak. It's not a cub. It's a race. He grew up directly. Fuck, it's disgusting and he's in the adult state. I came here for nothing. Ning Shu felt that the void wouldn't always spoil these races. Over a long period of time, too many newly born races had been exterminated. Now, they were being punished. These smoke-like creatures slowly formed black sickles in their hands. They were sickles in the shape of a figure 7. The sickles represented harvest and death. Ning Shu felt that this matter wasn't over yet. The races here today wouldn't be able to leave. There were many races here, but not all of them were here. However, to the void creatures, the loss of a race was a huge loss. After all, everyone didn't like to reproduce. Ning Shu clenched his teeth and felt a little sad. How did the situation change so coincidentally? The era of the cub being devoured was probably over. The smoke-like creatures holding the sickles disappeared instantly. It was a speed that even spiritual power couldn't capture. One by one, they appeared behind everyone. The sickles were placed on their necks. Before they could react, the sickles slashed and their entire heads were cut off. Even if they were void creatures, they wouldn't die immediately after losing an important part of their body. However, they wouldn't be able to unleash their strength. The smoke-like creatures floated behind everyone like the Grim Reaper harvesting lives. Ning Shu touched her neck in shock. It felt very cold. A sickle was placed on her neck. The coldness of the sickle and the cold killing intent caused goosebumps to rise all over her body. The danger made her tremble uncontrollably. The aura of death surrounded her as she waited desperately for death. Ning Shu didn't hesitate and grabbed the sickle. If her head was cut off, she would definitely die. The sickle moved towards her neck with a huge force. Ning Shu grabbed the sickle and blood flowed out from the blade and her knuckles. Using all her strength, Ning Shu gradually gained the upper hand. At least she wouldn't let the sickle cut her head off. Mountain reached out his huge hand and slapped the black fog on his shoulder, hoping to save Ning Shu. The black fog disappeared instantly along with the sickle. Mountain had to stop his hand to avoid slapping Ning Shu. In an instant, the black fog appeared behind Ning Shu again. It was so fast that Ning Shu didn't have time to react. Ning Shu turned around and punched the black fog. The black fog was scattered by Ning Shu's fist. However, it quickly gathered again and changed its position rapidly. Ning Shu's eyes and spiritual power couldn't capture its speed. Suddenly, Ning Shu's shoulder was hooked, and the sickle stabbed into her shoulder. Ning Shu was dragged away like a prey being dragged away. Mountain reached out to grab Ning Shu. However, the speed of the black fog wasn't something Mountain could catch. Ning Shu grabbed the sickle. The sickle that was deeply embedded in her skin seemed to be poisonous. The black poison spread along the wound. Ning Shu didn't have a good time. It was the same for the other races. Facing an unknown race with such fast speed, physical attacks were useless. They couldn't find a way to deal with it. They either had their limbs cut off or their necks slit. Blood of different colors splattered everywhere. This was a scene of massacre. It was a one-sided massacre. Just like how the other races treated their cubs. Ning Shu felt bitter. I haven't eaten other races before. I haven't swallowed their cubs. This time, they were only here for some energy. Mountain and she didn't think of swallowing the cubs. When one was unlucky, even water would be stuck between one's teeth. The void probably couldn't take it anymore. It could be said that the void creatures present were rarely innocent. Chapter 3971. These smoky creatures were all emotionless killers. They didn't say a single word. They raised their sickles and chopped down as if they were chopping melons. Ning Shu was dragged deeper and deeper by the scythe. The venom on the scythe made him unable to move. Even his senses were starting to become blurry. This scene left him speechless. He was here to eat and replenish his energy, but he ended up losing his life here. Moreover, there were quite a number of people from many races. They suffered heavy losses. Ning Shu felt that his race was also quite heavy. After all, if he died, the entire race would die too. When the mountain saw that Ning Shu was being dragged away, he immediately ran. He ran until the ground shook and he reached out to grab the mist-like creatures. However, the speed of the mist-like creatures wasn't something that the mountain could catch. The mountain was the one who was exhausted. The mist-like creatures didn't attack the mountain. Firstly, their bodies were too big. Secondly, their defensive abilities were too strong. They couldn't be killed in one hit. These mist-like creatures relied on their speed and were unpredictable. They would suddenly appear behind people and kill them. They were completely assassin-type creatures. Ning Shu grabbed the scythe and looked at the creatures floating in the sky. What method could he use to restrain this kind of race? No race was flawless. These creatures were very explosive. They probably couldn't last long. Although they couldn't last long, the problem was that ordinary attacks could reassemble their bodies even if they were cut into many pieces. Speaking of which, there was a very rustic method. That was to take a bottle and store them. However, there wasn't anything that could store the mist-like creatures. Also, the wind was more effective against them. And he understood the logic. However, what should he do? In any case, Ning Shu was feeling bitter. If only there was a container nearby that could contain her. Furthermore, where was she being dragged to? The others were all killed cleanly, but they were dragging her. Was it because she was a cub that they were especially merciful? Ning Shu was shocked by his own guess. After all, these killers were too cold. Container, where could he find a container? If he still had the peerless martial art, he could have used it to store this creature. Speaking of which, using the peerless martial art could store a lot of things. Ning Shu thought of the tumor in his brain. After continuous development, the peerless martial arts became uglier with each generation. In the end, it became a lump. Ning Shu communicated with the tumor that was quietly floating in his head. I need to suck in the creature behind me now. Give me some strength. The tumor ignored Ning Shu and did not respond at all. Ning Shu did not know if it would be effective, but even if it was not, she still wanted to escape from these assassins. Ning Shu grabbed the cold scythe. The scythe was like an ice blade. It was stuck to his skin and flesh, almost unable to be separated. It was embedded in his flesh. Moving it caused a heart-wrenching pain. Ning Shu turned his head and tried his best to press his forehead against the scythe. The scythe was very cold. Just touching it would cause a cold breeze, causing his head to hurt. Ning Shu touched it but there was no reaction, so he touched it again. There was still no reaction. Ning Shu used his head to bang against the scythe. The peerless martial art probably did not have any strength left. Otherwise, it would not be like this. Just as Ning Shu was disappointed and was thinking of another way, a thumb-sized black hole slowly rotated between his eyebrows. It had a huge suction force. First, the scythe was forced to be sucked in. The body of the mist-like creature holding the scythe was also slowly sucked into the hood like smoke. The mist-like creature wanted to struggle, but the suction force of the black hole was too strong. It could not struggle. He let out a beast-like roar and struggled to crawl out. In the end, he was completely sucked in unwillingly. Ning Shu's head was about to explode. His head hurt so much that it felt like it was stuffed full. No matter what, he was saved now. Ning Shu stood up shakily and covered the wound on his shoulder. Black poisonous blood kept flowing out. She ran towards Shan Yu with stiff limbs. Shan Yu ran and grabbed Ning Shu. He looked up and down. Are you okay? Ning Shu's lips were pale. I'm fine. It's just that this is poisonous. Bah. Shan Yu spat out a mouthful of saliva and directly spat on Ning Shu. Ning Shu felt like she had been splashed by a large basin of water. Her whole body was wet and she was in a very sorry state. Ning Shu was stunned. She asked stupidly, "What are you doing?" Shan Yu said, "Disinfecting, disinfecting." This was too realistic. Using saliva to disinfect. Ning Shu touched her face and brushed her hair aside. She decided to treat her wound first. She sat on Shan Yu's shoulder and exposed her shoulder. There was a black hole in the wound. Ning Shu squeezed hard on her wound and squeezed out the poisonous blood. She cried out in pain as she squeezed. What happened to Ning Shu made the battlefield tilt a little. With the previous example, when Ning Shu was treating her wound, no mist-like creature came to kill Ning Shu. Clearly, these mist-like creatures felt that Ning Shu had something that countered their race. Shan Yu was also a big guy, so it was difficult to fight him. On the battlefield, the other races slowly moved towards Ning Shu's side. They defended against the attacks while attacking Ning Shu. A race with sharp ears took out a fruit and threw it to Ning Shu. This is the antidote. Eat it. This meant that they wanted to cooperate. Ning Shu grabbed the fruit. This fruit was covered in lumps and looked extremely ugly. It also had a foul smell. It looked more like poison than anything else. Ning Shu didn't recognize this fruit. He held it up for Shan Yu to see. Shan Yu stared at the fruit for a while. I don't recognize it either. Hearing this, the ears of the pointy-eared race trembled. Do you think I still have the mind to harm you at this time? Ning Shu thought about it and agreed. Shan Yu said, not necessarily. After all, you are so ugly. Ning Shu looked at the pointy-eared race. Their faces were angular, and they had a pair of blue eyes. They were not ugly at all. The pointy-eared race was so angry that his eyes changed color. It was unknown whether it was because he was questioned or because he was called ugly. Eat it or not. If you don't want it, then forget it. Although he said this, he didn't leave. Ning Shu knew what he meant. However, he didn't know how many times he could use this ability. He might not be able to use it. Until now, Ning Shu's head was still buzzing. It was very uncomfortable. If it was used a few more times, it would probably explode. You just had to treat your wound, so you ate the ugly fruit full of lumps. Seeing Ning Shu eat the fruit, the pointy-eared race flew to Shan Yu's shoulder and sat down next to Ning Shu. After eating the fruit, the bleeding of the wound was also relieved. Chapter 3972. Every time he saw Fa Tian, Ning Shu couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Whose eyes were he trying to torture by making himself look so miserable? The story of conquering the heavens was much simpler. In any case, he just had to keep looking for things. He had to look for anything that could allow him to grow legs. Fa Tian felt so miserable. He kept looking for things. Previously, he was looking for things that could revive Ning Shu. Now, he was looking for things that could help him grow legs. He had suffered so much. He hugged himself with heartache. Ning Shu wanted to reach out and pat Fagan's shoulder to comfort him. However, when she saw how dirty his shoulder was, she decided against it. Fa Tian almost burst into tears. Are you looking down on me? No, no. I'm already so ugly. Why would I look down on you? Don't think too much. Ning Shu laughed. Fa Tian rolled his eyes. Ning Shu said, I found you the accompanying energy of a void cub. I heard that it can help you grow legs. Fa Tian raised his eyebrows, looking doubtful. Heard? Who told you that? Ning Shu. Shan Yu. Fa Tian snorted. I don't really believe it. We'll know if it's useful after we try. There's no harm in trying. Ning Shu didn't know if this thing was useful or not. If Shan Yu said it was useful, then let's give it a try. Fa Tian didn't object. After all, it was all for his legs. When they returned to their new clan land, Fa Tian looked left and right. For the sake of that river, I'll change clan land. This place was really barren. The Divine Stone Tribe was really thrifty. Ning Shu, the world is so big. Anywhere is home. Seeing Ning Shu return, Shan Yu heaved a sigh of relief. I thought something would happen to you. Ning Shu smiled. How could something happen? She wasn't there to fight. Here, this is the accompanying energy. Ning Shu gave the energy to Shan Yu and asked, do I just eat it? Shan Yu nodded. Eat it. Half of the accompanying energy is to help the cub grow taller. It has an extension effect. It will replenish whatever is lacking. Shan Yu smacked his lips. If it still doesn't work, it's probably because the accompanying energy is too little. Ning Shu, luckily, it's a lot. Ning Shu looked at Fa Tian. Hurry up and eat it all. Oh, Fa Tian replied as he absorbed all the accompanying energy. Then, he looked at his legs. Ning Shu asked, how do you feel? Heaven Punisher muttered, it's itchy. In the beginning, Fatian could still tolerate it. However, in the end, he could not help but want to use his hands to pinch it. The itch was unbearable. It was as if 10,000 ants were crawling on his skin. It was both itchy and numb. Oh my god, this feeling is really awesome. Ning Shu looked at Fa Tian's legs and was confused. Why didn't it grow back? Shan Yu said angrily, it's just a leg. How can it grow so fast? Fa Tian couldn't help it. It's so itchy. Is there something wrong? Shan Yu, it's itchy because it's growing. Ning Shu, Fa Tian, it doesn't seem to be the same thing. Fa Tian regretted eating it so hastily. Who knew it would be so itchy? Fa Tian, it's so itchy. Ning Shu, bear with it. Ning Shu probably felt that he was too cold and heartless. He softened his voice and said the most heartless words in the softest voice, bear with it. Fa Tian went to lie down in the cave. He was afraid that he would roll around in public if he stayed outside. It was really too itchy. Ning Shu found something for Fa Tian to eat. However, if Fa Tian's itchiness lasted for too long, it would make people wonder if this thing would work. He didn't want it to end up not growing back after suffering. However, Ning Shu didn't dare to show his melancholy in front of Fa Tian. Instead, he said very firmly, it will work. Ning Shu turned and left the cave. He ran quickly to find Shan Yu. Why do I feel like something is wrong? Do you want Carp to come over and take a look? Please don't let anything go wrong. Even though Fatian only lost a leg, I hope he doesn't lose his life. Ning Shu asked, is there racial segregation? Can't different races absorb each other's energy? Shan Yu's eyes widened. There's such a thing. Ning Shu, Shan Yu waved his hand. I don't think so. It's just that the energy isn't classified yet. There's no problem with energy. It's about. Ning Shu hurriedly asked, about what? Shan Yu, it's probably an allergy. He hasn't absorbed this kind of energy before. Ning Shu's face went numb. Was there such a thing as an allergy to energy? He was speechless. Ning Shu explained, he didn't have any energy when he was born. Fa Tian was a whip. He had a consciousness, personality, and intelligence. He didn't have any energy. Oh, no wonder. He just absorbed it. There must be something wrong. Do you want me to ask Carp to come over? I'm telling you, Carp won't come if he doesn't have something. He still owes you the last time, Shan Yu said. Ever since he had the cub, Shan Yu felt that he had met the doctor too many times. Ning Shu didn't have anything precious on him that Carp would be interested in. However, if he didn't ask Carp to come over, Fa Tian's situation would make him anxious. Ning Shu still decided to ask Carp to come over. Just as he was about to speak, Fa Tian called out to Ning Shu in a hoarse voice. Ning Shu entered the cave and saw Fa Tian staring blankly at his legs. Ning Shu looked over and found that Fa Tian's legs had really grown. However, there was a big problem, and that was that his legs had grown to his ankles. His legs hadn't grown out yet. This situation clearly meant that there wasn't enough energy. Ning Shu immediately regretted it. If he had known, he would have gotten more energy. Fa Tian was very happy. He turned his head and grabbed his messy curly hair. He looked tired. After being tortured for so long, his face naturally didn't look good. However, his eyes lit up. This method really works. After searching for so long, he finally found a way. Although his legs hadn't grown out yet, Fa Tian was already very satisfied. He just had to find more energy. He didn't expect it to be so simple. There weren't many races born in the void. Finding more energy was a very simple matter. Ning Shu also smiled. He reached out and touched Fa Tian's legs. They were warm and there wasn't a single gap. They were just like Fa Tian's original legs. Ning Shu said, "Congratulations, congratulations. You have a new leg." Fa Tian looked at Ning Shu and said, "Thank you." Ning Shu casually waved his hand. "With our relationship, there's no need to thank me. Haven't you always wanted to revive me? Let's not talk about this." Fa Tian smiled and the corners of his eyes curved. "Okay, I won't talk about it." Then, Ning Shu realized something inside. If only I knew about this earlier. Chapter 3973. Ning Shu, the innocent bystander, was suddenly involved in the battle. She tilted her head and looked at the two men. "Are you asking me? I really have nothing to do with him. Besides, whether I have something to do with him or not, what does it have to do with you?" Li Yangon showed a bloodthirsty smile. "As long as it's someone related to him, I won't let them have an easy time." Ning Shu said, "Oh, then can I go?" Li Yangon showed a malicious sneer to Qin Ji. "If you have nothing to do with him, you can naturally go. But now you have something to do with him." Ning Shu said, "I'm just a pitiful child passing by." Li Yangon said, "Innocent and pitiful. Some are even more cruel. They won't even let a woman go." Qin Ji's face showed a painful expression. "I'm sorry. I really didn't mean it. We didn't think your sister would do this." Ning Shu thought that the two people were flirting. It turned out that they really had old grudges. However, this had nothing to do with Ning Shu. There were too many things in the world. The most important thing now was to go to the north to find Earthworm and the others. As for these two strangers, Ning Shu was too lazy to care. Ning Shu was about to leave with the letter, but she was stopped by Li Yongan's servant. "You can't go." Ning Shu was a little unhappy. "I said, I'm just a child passing by. Who knows if you're deliberately pretending not to know each other, so you can't go." Li Yongan's tone to Ning Shu was very stiff, but it was not full of malice like it was to Qin Ji. Ning Shu said, "Speak human language. I'm just a child passing by. I don't understand the complicated grievances between you adults." Qin Ji said, "She really has nothing to do with me. Let her go." Ning Shu was a little annoyed. "Who cares what kind of entanglements you have between you two? I don't know why you're wasting other people's time." Ning Shu turned around and walked away. She did not want to be stopped by the thug. Without any hesitation, she struck out and sent the thug flying far away with a punch. He fell to the ground with a thud and vomited while clutching his stomach. The situation was suddenly reversed. No one thought that a child could beat an adult. The other thugs attacked together. Ning Shu used his hands and feet to get rid of all the obstacles in front of him. "Like I said, I'm just a kid passing by." Li Yangon stared at Ning Shu with an astonished expression. He inserted his fan into the jade belt at his waist and said to Ning Shu, "I'll deal with you." As he spoke, his fist flew towards Ning Shu like a gust of wind. Ning Shu tilted his head to avoid Li Yongan's fist, grabbed his wrist, and threw him over his shoulder. Ning Shu pounded the ground back and forth as if he was holding a stick. Li Yangon had many close contacts with the ground. All the bones in his body were dislocated. Ning Shu let go of Li Yangon. "I said, I'm just a kid passing by. What does your matter have to do with me?" Li Yangon was in so much pain that he couldn't get up. All the bones in his body were dislocated. What kind of kid was this? Poor kid. Who was more pitiful? Li Yangon couldn't move. He said to the thugs, "Why aren't you coming over to help me?" There was no way to stand up with his own strength. The thugs were also unbearable. They got up and carried Li Yangon away. Ning Shu patted the dust on his hands. He didn't want to fight. Qin Ji's expression was very apologetic. "I'm sorry, I implicated you." "Ning Shu, it's good that you know." Qin Ji cleaned up his stall and followed Ning Shu out of the city. He quickly caught up with Ning Shu and said, "Actually, this is all my fault. Ning Shu. What does it have to do with me? Qin Ji said very desolately, Li Yong'an's sister was indeed killed by me. There were feelings between us, but I'm just a scholar without any scholarly achievements. How am I worthy of her? Ning Shu, if you know you're not worthy, then don't provoke her. Qin Ji froze for a moment. You're right. Unfortunately, I'm a selfish person. I know there's no result, but I still provoke her. Ning Shu curled his lips. This kind of person obviously couldn't give the girl a future. He couldn't suppress his inner feelings, which led to terrible consequences. But this had nothing to do with her. Thank you for reading the letter for me. I'm leaving. Qin Ji subconsciously asked, are you going to the north alone? Is there a problem? Qin Ji just remembered that this little mushroom's fighting strength was quite terrifying. He smashed a man who was several cups heavier than him to the ground with a clang. Qin Ji suddenly knelt down in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu steadily watched him kneel down. He didn't avoid him. You wanted to kneel, no one forced you. Qin Ji gritted his teeth, I know I'm a very evil person, but my sister is innocent. I beg you to take my sister away from this place. Ning Shu, then take her away. He didn't want to take a burden, especially a girl. Aren't you afraid that I'll do something to your sister? Giving his sister to a stranger, this was too careless. Qin Ji, I can't leave. I have to stay to atone for my crimes. It doesn't matter if I die, I have to pay for it with my life. But my sister is innocent. Li Yong'an wants to give him a taste of his own medicine. He wants to make a move on my sister. Ning Shu made a sound of surprise, his expression was a bit puzzled. Why do I have to take your sister with me? He just read a letter and there was this kind of trouble. If he had known, he would have asked someone else to read the letter. She had proper business. Qin Ji saw that Ning Shu wasn't willing. As long as you are willing to give my sister a way out, she is willing to serve you for life. Ning Shu's face showed disdain. Your sister knows that you sold her out like this. You're still consoling yourself that you're doing this for the sake of her life. It's really tough being your sister. She's clearly been implicated by you, and now she's being sold as a slave. In the end, you're still acting like a good brother and thinking for your sister. Stay to atone for your crimes. You can't let others say that you are a heartless person. If he really wanted to think for his sister, he could take her away from here and start a new life. But he didn't want his reputation to be bad. Maybe it wasn't for his reputation, but for love. No matter what, for Qin Ji's sister, her heart was like a dog's. Qin Ji was speechless because what the other party said was the truth. His thoughts were exposed under the sun. He felt humiliated and uncomfortable. But Qin Ji didn't dare to resent Ning Shu. His sister's life was in his hands. Ning Shu, go and call your sister over. It's great that I lack someone to serve me. Can you cook? Qin Ji happily said, thank you, Gu Liang. Thank you. Chapter 3974. When Mountain heard that they were going to look for the associated energy again, he cursed, are you sure? You might run into the Netherworld race as soon as you go. You've seen the character of that race. No matter what, we'll just kill them first. They were completely unreasonable and would not listen to you. If you encountered such a race, you couldn't fight head-on. Compared to the Netherworld race, even the overbearing granduncles seemed more humane. After all, granduncles could talk, but the Netherworld race would not talk to you at all. Everyone pursued as much as possible, but the Netherworld race was completely indifferent to fame and fortune. Only killing was their ultimate goal. There was actually such an otherworldly race in the world. Ning Shu also did not want to go against this race. It's too ugly to have only legs and no feet. It probably doesn't need much associated energy. It's a pity that I didn't get more and grow my feet in one go. This kind of energy is so magical. I want to store more of it. Such a magical thing made Ning Shu want to have a taste of it. He wanted to taste it. Fatan and she were born without associated energy. What an incomplete life. Mountain took a deep breath. We have to go. Who knows if we'll run into the Netherworld race. The void is so big, and there's only one Netherworld race. Many new races can be born at the same time. The Netherworld race can't appear at the same time. It was completely a gamble. Ning Shu felt a little guilty when he thought about how unlucky he was. Fatan had already prepared his luggage. He said to Ning Shu, "Let's go." Mountain immediately asked, "Just the two of you?" Ning Shu nodded. "Yes, just the two of us. We won't bring you this time. Have a good rest. We've been troubling you before." If something really happened, she and Fatan would run as fast as they could. Mountain suddenly felt a little disappointed. In the past, he was dragged around by his child. Now, his child suddenly did not need him. Mountain asked, "Are you sure you don't need me to go with you? It's really dangerous for you two cubs to go out. With my figure, I'll be a deterrent even if I stand in a crowd." Moreover, Shan Yu wanted to follow him. She couldn't stay at home anymore. It was boring. Perhaps it was because she had done too many challenging things with her cub. Once she calmed down, it became boring. Furthermore, he had fused with 2 Styx River stones, and his overall defense had increased significantly. Thus, he was fearless. How many people were willing to beat him up? Shan Yu ignored their rejection and said, "I'll go with you. I'm really worried about you two cubs. Rather than waiting in the clan grounds, I might as well go with you." Ning Shu and Fatan looked at each other. "Alright, thank you for your hard work." Shan Yu nodded. Ning Shu and Fatan set off on Shan Yu's broad shoulders. "In order to avoid the Netherworld race, let's go further away," Ning Shu said. Mountain asked, "Where are we going then?" Fatan pondered for a moment. "Why don't we go in the direction of the glacier? It'll be best if we meet some races along the way. Anyway, we're going to the glacier." Ning Shu was a little hesitant. Isn't it a little early to go to the glacier? Her current strength was not very good, mainly because of her poor physical quality. If she had meridians and dantian, her body would be full of energy. She would definitely be able to withstand the ice and snow. Now that her body was weak, she was afraid that she wouldn't succeed in doing things by chance. Shan Yu said, "This place is too far from the glacier. One of us is in the south, and the other is in the north. It'll take a long time to get there. I'm sure we'll go there, and we'll have to pass through many dangerous areas and the clans of other races." Shan Yu didn't expect his cub to be so ambitious and wild. The void was very big, not to mention the distance between the north and the south. Ning Shu exclaimed, "That far? How far is it from here to the clan grounds of the grand uncle?" He remembered that it wasn't that far when he went with the little mouse. Shan Yu said, "That's still quite far." Fatan frowned. "Can't you do a space jump?" Shan Yu immediately said, "Every step I take is shrinking the earth into an inch. Do you really think I'm walking with my feet?" The void was too big. Even if Shan Yu used shrinking the earth into an inch when he was hurrying, every step he took was not as exaggerated as a small world. Moreover, the clans of some races could be said to be quite large, as if they were endless. Fatan gave up the plan to go to the glacier. After all, it was too far and there was no way. He was also a little anxious to become stronger. However, the situation was always somewhat different. Haste makes waste. Ning Shu breathed a sigh of relief. She felt that it was too early to go to the glacier. Not to mention the long distance, climbing mountains and wading through rivers was really too tiring. Moreover, even if they reached the place, the glaciers and the violent snowstorms would be a huge challenge. Ning Shu still had some idea of her own strength. She had a hunch that she would not succeed. Ning Shu said to the disappointed Fa Tian, "Don't worry. Take it slow. Aren't we both still alive now?" Fa Tian urgently wanted to become stronger. Ning Shu understood in her heart. "Don't worry. It's easy to lose your mind when you're anxious. The two of us must survive together." Fa Tian said. I know what I'm doing. Don't worry." After Ning Shu's death, Fujian had experienced many things on his own. If he really lost his mind, he might not be able to survive. Since Fa Tian had lost a leg, his strength had been greatly reduced. Moreover, he was alone. If he offended any race, he would die in a matter of minutes. He could even be piled on to death. There was no other way. Fa Tian was alone and did not have the strength to fight with a group of Taishu. What could he do? He could only hide. Ning Shu and Shan Yu asked, "Then where are we going?" The glaciers denied it. Next, they had to find a direction. "Let's find a more desolate place," Fa Tian said. Shan Yu scratched his head. Desolate? Is there any place more desolate than this? There was nothing. There were very few living creatures. There were swamps everywhere, bubbling and emitting a rotten stench. Ning Shu, Fa Tian, he was speechless. Before they even left, they had already lost their way. Shan Yu asked, "Shall we go to the lush forest?" Ning Shu shook his head without thinking. The lush forest is too dangerous. There are a lot of races there. If there really are cubs, the Netherworld race will most likely go there. There were a lot of races there. It was simply a killing paradise that the Netherworld race looked forward to. In fact, Fa Tian had seen many races being born there. However, he did not know that he needed the accompanying energy, so he did not pay much attention to it. Seeing some cubs being treated as food by some races, Fa Tian looked on coldly. He did not have the strength to save others. Chapter 3975. Ning Shu was dumbfounded. What did she miss? She seemed to have missed a lot of things. She even had great-grandchildren. She was the one who gave birth to Yang, so these children were actually her great-grandchildren. In the past, she had always been a mother. Now that her seniority had increased, she had become a great-grandmother. She had crossed several generations in a row. Ning Shu had a lot of questions. Who did Yang have so many children with? What kind of wives did they marry? Where did they go? The earthworm snorted. You really don't know? Ning Shu asked, with Hanshin. So they had a good relationship? No. The earthworm's expression was a little ugly. They couldn't get along and couldn't be together. Hanshin was too utilitarian. Ning Shu said, "Oh, then they. Are they still here?" They went out to hunt for food. The earthworm said, they should be back before sunset. Ning Shu looked at the earthworm. When did you become a human? She had been calling herself a two-legged monster, and now she had become a two-legged monster. How does it feel to walk on two legs? The earthworm's expression was ugly. Of course it's not good. If I wasn't afraid of scaring people, I wouldn't have become a two-legged monster. Ning Shu curled his lips and didn't say anything. The earthworm asked, "How did you become like this?" Something happened. I died, but then I came back to life and became like this. I slept for a long time. I thought you all died with me. There was nothing that could be explained in a sentence or two. It was too complicated. The earthworm couldn't say anything else. There was no news at all before, and the world was swept by an inexplicable force. Perhaps in a few hundred years, the world would become a desert. It would no longer be suitable for living creatures to live in. Ning Shu looked at the world and knew that it was probably because of the crack that some force from outside the Nine Palace Mountain entered the world. The world couldn't adapt to this force. It was eating away at the vitality of the world bit by bit. Now, outside the Nine Palace Mountain was a primitive world full of vitality. This force shouldn't be from the outside world, but from the previous world of reincarnation. This problem wasn't easy to solve. Ning Shu asked, "Then what are you doing here?" "Earthworm, plant trees." Ning Shu. The earthworm said, "Set up a barrier at the edge to slow down the spread." However, this kind of barrier needed constant maintenance. If it wasn't maintained, it would definitely be corroded by an inexplicable power. Back when she was young, Yao Nyang had traveled far and wide. When she arrived at this place, she immediately noticed that something was amiss. Wherever the wind blew, the life force here would be corroded. When Yao Nyang returned, she told the earthworm about this matter. The earthworm had experienced the transformation of a world into a reincarnation world. If that was the case, the body of a living being would be corroded. If he hadn't come to this level and stayed in the world of reincarnation, he would have become a soul. Therefore, he had no choice but to come over and keep watch. Moreover, Ning Shu had not appeared for a long time. Unable to find a solution, he left a letter for Ning Shu and left. Han Chen didn't want to eat sand. When the hot wind with sand blew on his face, it could take away all the moisture on his face. A person's face was always dry. Moreover, it aged people. Han Chen didn't want to go, but Yao Nyang felt that it was necessary to go and take a look. Moreover, if it was under control, there might be a solution when her aunt came back. If it wasn't under control and spread, everyone wouldn't have a good time. Even if her aunt came back and had a solution, it was too bad. There was nothing she could do. Han Chen thought that Yao Nyang would no longer be as naive and sweet as before after experiencing so many things. However, she was still like this, which disappointed him. Yao Nyang knew that Han Chen didn't like to meddle in other people's business, but she didn't expect his reaction to be so big. She didn't force him and said that he could come to them if he needed anything. After parting ways, Han Chen never appeared again. Yao Nyang and the others stayed at the edge of the desert. Yao Nyang's husband was a traveler. He met Yao Nyang in the desert and she saved him and dragged him home. The traveler didn't leave again. Instead, he lived with Yao Nyang and the others. Naturally, he was with Yao Nyang. Ning Shu was a little surprised. He thought that Yao Nyang only had Han Chen. At least, she liked Han Chen in her heart. But now, she was with another man. Seeing Ning Shu's surprised expression, Earthworm said with some surprise, "Yao Nyang has been waiting for Han Chen, but he hasn't appeared. This young man is a very interesting and sunny man. At least, Yao Nyang is very happy to be with him." Han Chen always had a cold expression on his face. Who knew what he was trying to do by looking like he was at the top all day long? Life was different when you were with an interesting person. This young man and Han Chen were two completely different men. Earthworm looked at Ning Shu. "Do you think more of Han Chen?" As a son-in-law who lived with him day and night, Earthworm naturally favored Yao Nyang's current husband. Ning Shu shook his head. "I like whoever Yao Nyang likes. What does Han Chen have to do with me?" Only then did Earthworm's expression improve. He beckoned the children who were looking outside to come in and introduced them to Ning Shu one by one. When it was time to introduce Ning Shu, Earthworm suddenly didn't know how to introduce Ning Shu. Ning Shu said directly, "Your grandmother calls me aunt. So you want to call me great-grandmother?" Although Ning Shu was only a child now, he didn't have the slightest intention of lowering his seniority. "Great-grandmother? You're still a child. You must be lying." As expected, Ning Shu's appearance and seniority were too different. These children were filled with righteous indignation. How could he let them call him great-grandmother? It was too unforgivable. Ning Shu snorted. It's fine if you don't believe me. You'll know when your grandmother comes back. By the way, where are their parents? Ning Shu asked. They went to the city to trade for things. After all, we still have to live, Earthworm said. Ning Shu looked at Earthworm with a complicated expression. Everyone has things to do. What's your job? I have to look after the children. Do you know how hard it is to take care of children? They'll run away in a while. It's so tiring and exhausting. Perhaps because Ning Shu's expression was too disgusted, he tried to explain himself. Oh, Ning Shu replied indifferently. Taking care of children was indeed an earthworm's job. The 4 children ran out of the house and made faces at Ning Shu. I don't want to call you great-grandmother. Ning Shu was incomparably calm. You will. Someone will teach you how to be a person, ha 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 ha. Qin Wanhua was at a loss and couldn't get a word in. The counterattack of the cannon fodder supporting character. Chapter 3976. Someone said, it's not a big deal. If it doesn't work, we can just raise these babies and raise them into our own race. Everyone turned their heads to look at him. This idea was really indescribably strange. However, it was in line with the character of the divine stone race. Of course, some people said that it was best to kill them in the cradle. Of course, even if they killed them, it didn't mean that they wouldn't be born in the future. If something that could suppress their race was born, it meant that it was time for them to return to the void. If they killed this one, it would be born again. However, raising them was a good idea. If there was something that could suppress their race, the void wouldn't give birth to new things to suppress them. Ning Shu was speechless. Could it be that he could see a scene of natural enemies living in harmony in this lifetime? After such a noisy discussion, the atmosphere was not as tense as before. Ning Shu and Shan Yu asked, are you really going to raise them? Shan Yu was also helpless. He spread out his hands and said, what else can we do? Do we have to be like the other races and kill their babies on the road of no return? Do you really think that those races are really greedy? Even if we kill them once, new ones will be born. We have no choice but to keep killing them. But the void is so big. If the babies that suppress our own race are born far away, we won't be able to make it in time. So everyone helps each other. No matter who they suppress, we kill them first. If we kill them indiscriminately, even if the babies that suppress our own race are born far away, there will be others helping. Ning Shu was speechless. In the face of death, all races and living beings were the same. No matter if they were strong or noble, or weak or lowly. They were all resistant, fearful, and struggling. The divine stone race would probably live in fear of death in the future. In fact, they wouldn't die immediately. Even if there was a race that could suppress them, these babies would need a long time to grow up. If there was a conflict, they would definitely be crushed. No one liked to be crushed, especially now that these races were still babies. It wouldn't be right if they didn't kill them in the cradle. So we either raise them or ignore them? Ning Shu asked. We can't ignore them. It's good to keep this race under our eyes. We don't have to raise them. We can just live next to them. Ning Shu sighed. This was truly a sad thing. In the past, he only saw all the races killing their young. It was extremely cruel. But in reality, this was a threat of death. When it came to him, he knew what it felt like. With a feeling of desperation mixed with desire, it devoured the cubs. Ning Shu felt that he was one with the divine stone race, so naturally, he was very worried about the fate of the divine stone race. Without the divine stone race, Ning Shu felt that he had no one to rely on and had no roots. Other races appeared one after another, and the energy fluctuations were getting stronger and stronger. It had already attracted many races over. The other races were surprised to see the Divine Stone race moving out. Generally speaking, the Divine Stone clan kept a low profile. To put it bluntly, they were lazy. They didn't move much and didn't kill their young. This time, all of them moved out, leaving everyone extremely shocked. Soon after, there were some intelligent clans that thought of something, looking at the Divine Stone clan meaningfully. When it came to the fate of their race, no matter how lazy they were, they would still move. No one wanted to die. When Shan Yu saw other races appear, his expression was not worried. If they killed their young, the unlucky ones would be their race in the end. They would constantly give birth to cubs that targeted their race. Shan Yu felt that not only could they not kill, but they also had to protect the cubs. Ning Shu also felt a headache coming. Shan Yu was already protecting the unborn race under his wings. Fa Tian didn't care about this matter, as long as he could get a little bit of accompanying energy and grow his leg back. The energy fluctuations were getting stronger and stronger, indicating that the cubs were about to be born. Who knew what kind of race would be born in such a desolate place? The Divine Stone clan gathered together and whispered in each other's ears, discussing how to deal with the cubs that were about to be born. Every time he saw the Divine Stone clan's clan meeting, Ning Shu felt a little like a primary school student in a class. One by one, they raised their hands to speak, and in the end, there were usually several opinions. In any case, Ning Shu felt tired just by watching and listening to them. In summary, they were divided into two factions. One faction decided to raise the newly born race, and the other was too lazy to care about the race and let it fend for itself. Regardless of whether he was eaten by the other races or survived, he would just let nature take its course. Whatever happened would happen. In the opinions of these two factions, they didn't say that they wanted to kill the race with their own hands. Ning Shu listened to these people and sighed in his heart. This was really a lazy and kind race. Fortunately, Ning Shu was able to live until now because of them. As for these cubs, the Divine Stone clan didn't think about killing them. The Divine Stone clan occupied one side. Their large size and large numbers squeezed the other races to the side. They stood in the narrow space, feeling wronged. However, the Divine Stone clan didn't notice at all. They were discussing how to deal with the newly born cubs, and their saliva was flying everywhere. In the end, they couldn't come to a consensus. Shan Yu asked Ning Shu, "What do you think? What was the point of kicking the ball to others?" Ning Shu didn't want to make a choice. "I think it's good, very good." Shan Yu said, "You're so unreliable." Then he asked for Fa Tian's opinion. "What do you think?" Fa Tian raised his head silently. There was a shadow between his eyebrows. His tone was a bit gloomy. He said ruthlessly, "Why don't we kill all of them?" Shan Yu was surprised. "I shouldn't have asked you." In the end, Shan Yu said, "Then we'll see. If there are many of them, we won't care. If there are few, we'll raise them." A clansman asked, "You said the opposite." "If there are many of them, we'll raise them. If there are few, we won't care." Shan Yu choked. "It's the same. As long as you understand." Ning Shu was speechless. The meaning was completely different. The energy waves were getting stronger and stronger. The cubs were about to be born. Everyone present was nervous. They didn't know what to feel about the newly born race. Everyone waited in the desolate place for the cubs to be born. Ning Shu was very curious about what the race that restrained the Divine Stone clan looked like. The energy waves were surging. Even Ning Shu, who couldn't feel the energy waves, felt his ears ring. Gusts of wind blew into his ears. His ears were very uncomfortable. Everyone was ready. Shan Yu was even pacing back and forth. He looked like a father waiting for a newborn at the door of the delivery room. Ning Shu was thunderstruck. He didn't know if they were looking forward to this race or hated it. Chapter 3977. Ning Shu was worried about the wound on his shoulder. He did not know what kind of poison it was, and it was not easy to detoxify it. Ever since he was poisoned, his body had been weak and he could not summon any strength. It was a good thing that the black fog wanted to reclaim the poison. Mountain, who was standing in front of Ning Shu, paused for a moment and then moved aside. However, he still looked at the black fog warily and said to Ning Shu, "You are too careless to let him detoxify the poison. What if he cuts your neck?" Ning Shu said, "Who knows? Let's see." The black fog floated in front of Ning Shu. She looked at the black fog nervously. The black fog reached out its sickle. Ning Shu saw the sickle and gulped. He said, "Be gentler." Ah. Before he could finish his words, the scythe pierced his wound mercilessly. There was no hesitation at all. It was a clean and efficient move. If the black fog had a face, it would probably have a cold and emotionless face. Ning Shu could clearly feel that the scythe had pierced deep into her body, causing a second wound on her shoulder. Soon, the black fog indifferently withdrew the scythe. Blood flowed out of the wound. It was red and no longer black. It meant that the wound was no longer poisoned. The sickle had really reclaimed the poison. The black fog tribe was really thrifty. Ning Shu grimaced in pain. He wanted to apologize, but the wound was too painful. He was angry and did not want to thank the black fog. "You poked me like this and you still have to thank me. I am so angry." The black fog reclaimed the poison and then stared at the divine stone tribe. Everyone who was stared at could not help but feel nervous. They all had a creepy feeling. The atmosphere was heavy. It seemed that the black fog wanted to kill the divine stone tribe. The black fog was born to kill. Now that it saw the divine stone tribe, which was not a cub, its desire to kill was stirred up. Mountain stood in front of his tribesmen. He looked at the black fog and shouted, "I tell you, you can't beat us alone." Mountain did not know if the black fog could understand what he was saying, or if it knew how to judge and analyze the current situation. Although Black Fog was alone now, with his special physique, Mountain felt that he could single-handedly defeat their entire tribe. After all, the Divine Stone clan was clumsy and heavy, while the Netherworld clan was extremely fast. The Black Fog might not be able to kill them, but the Divine Stone clan couldn't do anything to the Black Fog either. Ning Shu watched from the side without saying a word. The Netherworld race's intelligence wasn't very high, and they might not necessarily be obedient. Not killing the cubs did not mean that they would absolutely not kill the cubs. A thick murderous aura condensed in the air, and a battle was about to break out. Shan Yu said to Ning Shu solemnly, "You are hiding. It seems that there is going to be a fight." The Netherworld race was too aggressive. The desire to kill was carved into their bones. Ning Shu was too weak to be of any help right now. He ran a little further away and stood on a rock to look over there. He thought that after releasing the Black Fog, it would leave to find its own people. Who would have thought that the Black Fog would challenge the Divine Stone clan alone? Convinced, Ning Shu shouted to Shan Yu and the others, "You guys be careful." Shan Yu stretched his muscles, and the rocks on his body creaked. He laughed and said, "Don't worry, the defense of our clan is no joke. We haven't fought for a long time. We also need to understand this clan, so that we can be prepared for the future." Since the birth of the Netherworld race, many clans have been preparing for war. The Black Fog was very fast. It disappeared almost instantly and reappeared behind Shan Yu. It raised its scythe and slashed at Shan Yu's neck. The scythe and the rock and metal on Shan Yu's body created sparks, and a series of sparks flew. Shan Yu touched his neck and laughed. He was very happy that his strong defense had allowed him to avoid the fatal attack. The Black Fog changed its target and attacked the other clansmen. After attacking several people in a row, the Divine Stone clan survived because of their strong defense. Although the black fog didn't have a face, it made people feel that it was a little lost. Obviously, it hadn't found a way to break the defense of the Divine Stone clan. It was thinking and attacking the Divine Stone clan again and again. Of course, the Divine Stone clan didn't just stand there and wait to be beaten. They took out their stone hammers and kept hitting the black fog like they were playing whack-a-mole. However, the black fog was too fast. Out of 10 hits, it didn't hit. Even if it hit and scattered the black fog, it quickly gathered again. It was the same as before, and it didn't seem to cause any damage to the black fog. Instead, it kept hitting the black fog with the hammers, and it was so tired that it was panting. Ning Shu carefully observed the situation of the battle between the two sides. Indeed, neither side could do anything to the other. One had a strong defense, and the other was fast. Even if the black fog was hit by the hammers and its body was scattered, it didn't show any signs of pain. Could it be that the black fog couldn't feel pain? Could it be that it was in the form of a fog, without a physical body, or organs, so it couldn't feel pain? This was a very scary thing. Not only was the desire to kill strong, but it also didn't feel pain. This was a very scary thing. Feeling pain would limit one's actions and thoughts. Without pain, there was nothing that could stop the Netherworld clan from killing. The two sides fought fiercely. In the beginning, Ning Shu was still very nervous, worried that someone from the Divine Stone clan would be killed. However, as time went on, the two sides fought back and forth. They fought for a long time without any accidents. It was a bit like they were having fun. Both sides hit each other, and in the end, Ning Shu propped up his chin and yawned as he watched the two sides fight. The black fog stopped attacking. The Divine Stone clan was also tired and panting. They almost stuck out their tongues. After attacking so many times, they still couldn't kill a single person. No matter how low the intelligence of the Netherworld clan was, they felt that they couldn't continue fighting. The black fog turned around and disappeared in an instant. He probably went back to his clan. As soon as he left, the Divine Stone clan's clansmen all fell to the ground. They were too tired. It was finally over. Shan Yu panted. "Oh my God, I'm so tired. It hurts so much." Everyone was grimacing in pain. Some of the clansmen were lying on the ground, moaning. Although the black fog couldn't kill the Divine Stone clan, the injuries on their bodies were real. It was very painful. Ning Shu jumped between the rocks and landed in front of Shan Yu. He asked, "How much damage did you guys take?" Once it exceeded the limit, the Divine Stone clan would be in trouble. The other clansmen said, "Our defense is still not strong enough. We shouldn't stay here and not move. We should go out and find some good stones and metals." After being beaten up, they felt uneasy. Chapter 3978. The barrier was set up by Earthworm. In the beginning, it was quite useful, but later on, it was completely useless. The sandstorm directly spread behind the barrier. The barrier was like a wall, but now it seemed that the wall was no longer working. At most, it could only slow down the speed of its spread. The power of the sandstorm was getting stronger. Ning Shu ate the food. It tasted pretty good. Compared to Hanchen, Shidong was indeed a man who knew how to live. Hanchen probably walked the path of ruthlessness. He didn't care about the mortal world and walked the path of nobility. Earthworm picked up food for Ning Shu. Seeing how much she ate, he thought, no wonder she was so fat. It was probably because she was reborn and had a body. In the end, she didn't have self-discipline and ate so much that she became as fat as a pig. Earthworm also knew about the world of reincarnation. He knew that living things had to be reborn after death. However, Ning Shu could remember the past, which surprised Earthworm. The rebirth pool could wash away the 7 emotions and 6 desires and memories in the soul. Perhaps because she was stronger, Earthworm was forced to board a stolen car. Furthermore, it was a stolen car with a dead car door. He felt aggrieved, but he couldn't deny her strength. In such a situation, Earthworm and Yang subconsciously relied on Ning-Shu. Shidong was just an ordinary person. He knew that Yang's uncle wasn't an ordinary person, so Yang's aunt wasn't an ordinary person either. In any case, he couldn't do anything about it. He could only rely on them. He had to go to the crack to take a look. If it didn't work, he would just dig a small hole. If it could prevent the sandstorm from spreading, it would be fine too. 9 Palace Mountain was really, she spent too much effort on it. Now that 9 Palace Mountain wasn't by her side, she still had to worry about it. After eating, Qin Wanhua, who had fainted from fright, packed her things and was about to leave. When she saw Ning-Shu enter the room, she shouted to her, "Miss, there's a monster here." "There's a monster." "Oh," Ning-Shu replied. "Where are you going after leaving this place?" Qin Wanhua paused. She remembered that she had already sold herself to her as a slave and couldn't leave. However, when she thought of that huge tail, Qin Wanhua felt unwell. Her body couldn't help but tremble in fear. Ning-Shu could understand. Qin Wanhua was just an ordinary person. She would definitely be afraid when facing such an extraordinary existence. Instead of living in fear, it would be better to leave this place. There were some things that couldn't be accepted, so there was no need to force it. "Then leave. I never wanted you to serve me. I'll leave soon. Let Yang take you away." Ning-Shu told Yang about this matter. Yang frowned as she looked at Qin Wanhua. "Don't tell me that you've spread rumors about my uncle. He has sharp ears and eyes, and he can hear things from far away." Qin Wanhua quickly shook her head. "No, I won't." Her worldview had collapsed. Everyone who lived here was Yang's family, and she didn't wish for an outsider to live here. Since she was leaving, Yang was actually happy. If she couldn't accept it, then she wouldn't force it. Yang's chi energy was in the form of a fiery bird. Its entire body was burning with flames, and it was very large. Yang grabbed Qin Wanhua's collar and jumped onto the back of the fiery bird. Qin Wanhua fainted again. Ning-Shu shook his head. She was too timid. It was getting late. Ning-Shu decided to get a good night's sleep and go to the crack the next day. Ning-Shu was very calm when he was with Earthworm and the others. Such a peaceful life was indeed very calming. After a good sleep, when he woke up for breakfast, Yang had already returned. Breakfast was made by Shidong. It was a big pot of century egg and lean meat porridge. There were so many people, including a few children. Everyone ate to their heart's content. There were delicious pickles on the table. Ning-Shu asked Yang how she had arranged for Qin Wanhua. Yang said, "Actually, I know some people outside. I sent her to a sect to be a handyman. For my sake, her life shouldn't be too difficult." Ning-Shu nodded. He had already done everything he could. He and Qin Wanhua were just strangers who had met by chance. Ning-Shu drank 2 bowls of century egg and lean meat porridge. He wiped his mouth and said, "I'm going to take a look. You guys eat slowly." Earthworm put down his chopsticks. "I'll go with you." The children immediately asked, "Great-grandpa, where are you going?" "We want to go too." Yang stopped the children. "Stop fooling around. Your great-grandpa has something important to do." Shidong prepared a large amount of water for Ning-Shu and Earthworm. Crossing the desert was not an easy task. Moreover, the desert was windy all year round. Back then, he was blown away by a tornado. Fortunately, he met Yang. Otherwise, he would have died. Seeing that Ning Shu seemed to have eaten a lot, he prepared some dry biscuits and brought them along. Ning Shu saw that Shi Dong had prepared so well. He looked like an elder who was gratified. "You're good. Very good." She was just a little radish head. It was a little funny for her to act like this. Of course, these things were carried by Earthworm. The family sent Ning Shu and Earthworm to the edge of the desert. A hot wind blew over, carrying the sand. Ning Shu opened his mouth to speak and was caught off guard and ate a mouthful of sand. Even in the morning, the sand was boiling hot. Ning Shu spat out the sand in his mouth, and his teeth chattered. Ning Shu and Earthworm stepped into the desert and disappeared into the wind and sand. Ning Shu stepped on the sand with one foot and the heat waves rolled. In just a short while, Ning Shu felt that the water on his face had been sucked dry. His face hurt. Ning Shu asked, "How long are we going to walk for? Why don't we just do a space jump?" The biggest problem with a space jump was not knowing the direction. Why don't they just leave the world and dig a hole outside Nine Palace Mountain? Earthworm thought it was fat and delicate. After it was born, it became so delicate after it had a body. Earthworm returned to its original form. It was a big black earthworm with pitch-black scales all over its body. "Come on up. It'll be faster." Ning Shu jumped onto Earthworm's back without hesitation. The earthworm quickly began to move like a snake. It slithered across the sand, leaving behind a series of curved tracks. It was very fast, but Ning Shu didn't dare to open his mouth. If he did, his mouth would be full of sand. Earthworm's speed wasn't slow either. Occasionally, it would stop to replenish its water. Ning Shu was shocked. So much of the desert has become desertified? It had only been a day. According to Earthworm's speed, at least 1/5 of the world had become desertified. Earthworm nodded. Yes. Previously, there was a barrier that could slow it down a little, but now it's useless. Ning Shu sighed. He didn't know if his method would work. Moreover, if it was dug through, would the outside world also become desertified? However, when the stellar stone was almost completely corroded, it would also be connected to the outside world. It was only a matter of time. The Canon Fodder female supporting character counterattack. The Canon Fodder female supporting character counterattack. Chapter 3979. There were too many perverts in the outside world. Why were the cubs now like this? Why were the cubs now so powerful? They were all about to ascend to the heavens. The old races in the void felt that the sky was about to change. They were about to be eliminated. The new races were each more strange and perverted than the previous. Perhaps they were used to peace and were used to a long and dull life. The new races were obviously not peace-loving. This made them very uncomfortable. They were forced to be nervous and anxious. Everyone looked at this cub as if they were looking at a monster. He ate everything, whether it was stones or other things. It was as if there was nothing in the void that he didn't eat. But after eating so much, why was he still yellow and emaciated? Oh my God, terrifying. Such a cub was too terrifying to live like this. In front of everyone, this cub finished eating an arm, but he still shouted that he was hungry. "I'm so hungry, I'm so hungry." His expression became more and more distorted. He was filled with irritation and uneasiness. Because he was hungry and couldn't get satisfied, he became abnormally anxious and violent. When Ning Shu saw this cub, he couldn't help but have a toothache. This was simply a bottomless pit. He didn't know when he would finish eating. Probably when he felt full, he would return to the embrace of the void. Seeing that this cub was about to explode in anger, he looked very scary with his teeth bared. Fa Tian protected Ning Shu behind him and whispered, "Hide at the side. You will probably be very tender to eat like this." Ning Shu was speechless. Please don't be like this. I'm not a steamed bun. He made it sound like she was food. But in this cub's eyes, she was indeed food. Everything was food. This was really, seeing that Ning Shu didn't believe him, Fatan whispered, don't doubt it. Among this group of people, you have the most energy. Since it's food, he will definitely pick the one with more energy. It's just that there are so many people and he hasn't noticed you yet. Ning Shu thought of the tumor in his head. That was an ultimate martial art. In terms of energy, it definitely had more energy. Thinking of this possibility, Ning Shu immediately shrank to the back of the crowd, trying to reduce his presence. She didn't want to be eaten. Shan Yu took out a stick stone and handed it to the refugee child who was crying piteously for food. Eat this. The refugee child was stunned for a moment. Clearly, he did not expect that someone would take the initiative to give him something to eat. What he meant was to eat something with energy in the void. Earth was also a type of energy, but it didn't have a good texture. The energy he had just eaten had a soft texture. The refugee child took the Styx River stone and bit it. With a cracking sound, a crack appeared on the Styx River stone. It seemed to be a little strenuous for him to chew, but at least he was chewing slowly. However, the entire divine stone race was stupefied. They were stupefied. This was Underworld River stone. It could be said to be an extremely hard object. What kind of teeth did he have? Oh my God, he could even chew through the river Styx. Nibbling on them would be like nibbling on tofu. It was too pathetic. It was certain that this cub was the bane of their race. As for the other races, they didn't have much defense anyway, so it was easier to eat them. Although the Styx River stone was very hard, the refugee children were still very happy to eat it. They chewed slowly, and there was a dreamy and happy expression on their faces. However, the others weren't happy. They only felt pain in their balls and horror. When they saw that the cub's attention was on the Styx River stone, they all slipped away. They couldn't afford to offend him and ran away. The burly man who was missing an arm took deep breaths. He looked very unconvinced, but when he saw the cub hugging the stone and crunching it, he couldn't help but swallow his anger. He could only swallow this resentment and hatred. He turned around and left bitterly, covering his wound. His back view was very bleak. It was because of this emptiness that only the divine stone race was present. While the child was still chewing on the stone, they began to gather and whisper to each other for a clan meeting. Clansman A, oh my God, if we raise this plaything, it'll be like a mouse falling into a rice jar. When it's hungry, it'll bite us. I can't stand it, I can't stand it. Clansman B, yes, let him eat others. Don't bring him back. I'm afraid that when I wake up from my sleep, my lower body will be gone. If he couldn't even sleep well, what fun was there in life? Oh my God. Mountain didn't say anything. He looked like he was deep in thought. Everyone was discussing. When it was Mountain's turn to speak, he suddenly looked at Ning Shu. The love in his eyes was almost overflowing. Ning Shu's black face was filled with question marks. What was going on? Be normal. This was a big matter for the race. Mountain said to Ning Shu, with this cub as a comparison, I think you're really good. You're like an angel. Without comparison, there would be no harm. Without comparison, there would be no happiness. Ning Shu was speechless. What was going on? Ning Shu, you want to keep this cub? Mountain took a deep breath. It was as if he had a toothache. He was very conflicted. Obviously, Mountain wanted to keep this child. But it was just as his clansman had said. If he kept this child, it would be very dangerous for his clansmen. It would be very unfair to his clansmen. He couldn't disturb the peace of his race because of an outsider. To Mountain, the most important thing was his clansmen. Mountain sighed. In the end, he gave up on adopting this child. It was very dangerous, but he couldn't keep lay with him. Mountain gave the child a stick stone. The stick stone was very hard and could be eaten for a long time. When his attention was on the food, they could run. Seeing that Mountain was wasting the stick stone, the clansmen's eyes bulged. They stared at Mountain but didn't say anything. Thus, everyone started to count to 3 and started to run. The tremors caused the ground to tremble. The cub held the stone and stared blankly at the clansman. Then, he staggered and followed. The clansmen in front of them were running wildly. When they saw the child behind them, he staggered and looked like he would fall to the ground in the next second. He looked helpless, weak, and pitiful. But the God Stone clan in front of them looked like they had seen a ghost. They sped up, but they couldn't get rid of the cub behind them. "Why don't you fall? Why don't you fall and cry? Why are you stumbling? How can you run so fast?" The God Stone clan was really desperate. Very desperate. Some clansmen had tears in their eyes. "Don't ask me why I'm crying. It's because I'm scared." The cub kept chasing but couldn't catch up. Then he really started crying and shouted, "I'm so hungry." Chapter 3980. The newly born races were beautiful and cute. More importantly, they were very clean. Not only were they not stained with blood, but they also gave off an ethereal feeling. After the transparent bubble burst, the flower fairy flapped her little transparent wings and tried to fly up. This kind of clean and beautiful race looked very appetizing and delicious. Ning Shu and Mountain also swallowed their saliva. It was not because they were hungry, but because of other reasons. Especially when they saw the eager and drooling faces of the races present, Ning Shu and Mountain could not help but want to cover their faces. They could not bear to look. Doing this in front of the Netherworld race was really courting death. More and more cubs were born. The sky was filled with beautiful cubs. Some people could no longer hold back and took the initiative to catch the cubs. When the newly born cubs saw this situation, they were all frightened and flapped their wings. The cubs who were caught were so frightened that they turned pale and trembled. They closed their eyes and waited for death. The races present were all tempted. They were afraid that the cubs would be snatched by others if they were too slow. The cubs flying in the sky stumbled and tried to avoid being caught. When they saw their own clansmen being caught, they all cried and sobbed softly. They wanted to go forward and save them, but they were incomparably afraid. At this time, the Netherworld race began to move. In an instant, those who were still standing in the same place disappeared. When they reappeared, they had already raised their scythes and cut off the necks of others. The head and the brain were separated from the body. They were still holding the cubs that were struggling powerlessly. Their faces were full of hunger. In an instant, a life was lost. Many other races fell down one after another. Fresh blood spurted out and splashed on the grass. The grass was pressed down, and drops of blood dripped from the tip of the leaves. The sudden situation stunned many people. Some of the races that were still alive retreated a few steps. They did not go to catch the cubs immediately. Instead, they were on guard against the Netherworld race. "What's wrong with you? Why are you killing people instead of snatching the cubs?" This was simply crazy. In this situation, instead of snatching the cubs, you killed people. It gave people the impression that you could not snatch the cubs and then killed them out of anger. What the hell? What kind of race was this? They did not know the rules and did not have a body. What kind of monsters were they? Basically, as long as it was a void creature, it would always have a body, and those without a body like this were monsters. All the void creatures present looked at the Netherworld race with disdain. It was as if they were looking at a handicapped person. It felt a little strange. It was simply underdeveloped. "Mountain, I can't even bear to watch. The next scene would definitely be bloody, and his young heart would not be able to bear it. Ning Shu, oh my God, the world of adults is so scary. I don't want to grow up anymore. The Netherworld race's reason for massacring them was to protect their cubs. If they wanted to kill their cubs, then they would kill them. If nothing unexpected happened, the Netherworld race would be strolling around the entire void, and they would even appear at the place where their young were born. At that time, the name of the Netherworld race would resound throughout the entire void, and countless races would be slaughtered. Eating cubs would become a thing of the past. Eating cubs meant that they would be slaughtered by the Netherworld race. Was life more important, or was it the desire for good food and a little bit of pure energy? Of course, their lives were more important. Under this kind of pressure, no living being dared to treat their lives as a joke. Although they had lived for a long time, once they died, they were completely dead. Not even a trace of their corpses was left behind. From all the signs, it seemed that the birth of the Netherworld race was a method of controlling the void. The living beings present relied on their numbers and faintly joined forces to fight against the Netherworld race. They felt that the Netherworld race was new and wanted to reason with them. This was not how they snatched things. They were completely unreasonable. If they did not know the rules, then they would teach them the rules. The Netherworld race did not listen to these people at all. They simply slaughtered the races under their control. Any living being targeted by the Netherworld race would definitely not be able to escape. Hey, what's the matter with you guys? The situation was somewhat unexpected, and these people did not expect it at all. Although there was a lot of blood splattered on the black scythe, it could not be seen. Layer after layer of blood shrouded the scythe with a thick aura of death. Ning Shu looked at this slaughter feast. It was completely a one-sided slaughter. None of these dead creatures had a complete body. All of them had incomplete limbs. Not even a complete corpse was left. The energy in these bodies would quickly return to the void and return to the embrace of the void. Seeing that these incomplete smoke creatures did not seem to understand and only knew how to kill, the living beings did not care about the newly born. At this time, it was already a question whether they could keep their lives. What was the point of eating? One by one, they fled in panic. However, it was impossible to escape. When they turned around, a black shadow followed them like a shadow, holding a scythe. The sickle pierced into the body and pierced through. Then, it was pulled out, causing a large wound on the body. The wound was bleeding, and it was black blood. The poison on the scythe made people unable to move, and they became prey to be slaughtered. Ning Shu took a deep breath. As expected, it was better not to grow up. The Netherworld race was slightly more merciful to the young, but when it came to mature living beings, they were ruthless. Everyone was a proud and arrogant void race. Who would be afraid of you? They were talking nicely to you, but you acted like this. Then there was no other way. They could only work together to kill this race. This was breaking the rules. Everyone had a tacit understanding of the rules. This guy was completely messing around. There was a need to teach him a lesson. No matter how weak the void race was, they still had innate skills. It was impossible to give birth to a useless race. Seeing that the situation was getting worse, this new race was very reckless. They did not care about what others said and only knew how to kill. They did not care about rules or unspoken rules at all. They felt like they were beating an old master to death with their fists. They could only work together to kill this race. The place where birds sang and flowers were fragrant suddenly became bloody. Corpses were everywhere, and the earth shook when they fought. The Netherworld race was very fast. Their figures could not be seen clearly, and they did not feel pain. Even if they were hit, they would disperse the smoke and quickly condense again. It was the kind that could not be killed. It was really very despairing. Exhausting people to death and exhausting their energy, but in the end, nothing happened to the other party. This was too cruel. The newly born children hugged each other and trembled. They had just been born, so why did they have to go through this? They were still children. It was very sad to face such a baptism at birth. The scene was very bloody. Ning Shu and Mountain watched from afar, not daring to get close. Chapter 3981. Ning Shu answered Go Zi's questions one by one. On the phone, these are all things from the outside world. I can't eat them. It's so sad. The puppy said sadly as he ate furiously. You can eat them when you go to the living world. Food is the energy that humans use to extend their lives. If you don't eat, you will starve to death. Ning Shu said to Go Zi. Go Zi asked, how can I get others to give me food? Ning Shu looked at him. Maybe being a stray dog is a good choice. A kind and cute girl will feed you some food. Go Zi's watery eyes lit up. Is that really okay? Ning Shu nodded. Of course, it would be even better if you could find a poop picker. When you look at people, you have to look at them with your innocent and watery eyes. Yes, that's how you look now. Ning Shu was trying his best to create a pitiful puppy who would beg for food by acting cute. Although Go Zi was tempted, he felt that something was wrong. But it was good to get food this way. If it didn't work, it was not bad to use blessings in exchange for food. Go Zi's heart softened a little. What did you ask me about earlier? Ning Shu said, I need the faith of the heavenly Tao. But I didn't find where to get the faith of the heavenly Tao from the birthplace. You should know, right? Go Zi shook his head. I don't know. I rarely leave the world of reincarnation. Also, why do you want to find the faith of the heavenly Tao from the birthplace? Because I need this thing. Didn't you get the faith of the heavenly Tao when you entered the world? Go Zi followed him to that world. Ning Shu nodded. I got it. Go Zi said, then why do you still want to find it? Ning Shu said. Because it's too little and too slow. Go Zi looked at Ning Shu with condemnation. How can you do this? Because the faith of the heavenly Tao is too little in your own world, you want to snatch the faith of the birthplace. Ning Shu was speechless. Go Zi looked at Ning Shu, don't lie to me. Although I have been in the world of reincarnation, there are many souls there. You're doing this because your soul is weak, so you want to snatch the soul power of others. You're so bad. They couldn't earn money themselves, so they had to resort to robbery. Ning Shu was speechless. There was actually no way to refute this. There was nothing wrong with this logic. Under Go Zi's wet eyes, there was nowhere to hide. Go Zi said, I won't tell you, and I really don't know. Friend, your morals are flawed. You can't do this. You helped the small world, and the heavenly axiom rewarded you. Isn't this the fairest and best situation? Go Zi tilted his head and looked at Ning Shu, questioning him from the bottom of his soul. Ning Shu was speechless. He had nothing to say to a dog's question. Sun Qi, what do you think? Ning Shu. I think you're right. Go Zi, then are you still looking for the faith power of the heavenly axiom? The small world is born in the place of birth, and the small world gives the faith power of the heavenly axiom to the place of birth. Isn't that natural? What right do you have to snatch from others? Ning Shu was speechless. I'll go back and look for the ultimate martial arts. The ultimate martial arts will be mine anyway. Ning Shu took away all the food in front of Go Zi. You want to eat my food? Dream on. Go Zi looked at Ning Shu with an innocent gaze. How can you do this? He turned his face mercilessly. Ning Shu snorted. He opened the bit wall and was about to leave. Go Zi instantly shouted, oh right, don't open the bit wall so easily. Ning Shu left the world of reincarnation and returned to the clan land. He heard a bunch of righteous words that were like whipping Ning Shu's conscience. Okay, let's go and get the faith power of the heavenly axiom. The ultimate martial arts probably didn't have much faith power of the heavenly axiom. After all, it hadn't been long since the world was born. But as time passed, the ultimate martial arts would get a lot of faith power of the heavenly axiom. Actually, Ning Shu didn't have to go to other places of birth to look for the faith power of the heavenly axiom. The ultimate martial arts itself was a treasure trove. It was just that he didn't get much. Ning Shu calmed down. He waited for the ultimate martial arts to accumulate while he entered the small world to earn faith power. He believed that he would be able to reconstruct his meridians very soon. This was really exciting news. He felt great. With such a treasure trove, did he need to go to other places of birth to defend the champion? There was no need. Ning Shu, who thought it through, felt really comfortable. Suddenly, he felt a burning sensation on his wrist. It was the feeling of his meridians being reconstructed. After a while, Ning Shu took a look. He realized that one of the meridians had spread to his elbow. It was at his wrist before, but now it had reached his elbow. If he wasn't wrong, it might be the ultimate martial arts that had reconstructed it for him. The reconstruction this time was much longer than the last time. Obviously, he had gained a lot. Ning Shu was very happy. The longer his meridians were, the more power he could store, and he would become stronger. Therefore, the problem of his meridians wouldn't be a problem in the future. Maybe it would be solved soon. Some things had to be solved, and some anger had to be vented. Happiness was the most important. Ning Shu started to store power in his meridians. Previously, he could only use it twice. Now, he should be able to use it 10 or 20 times. He didn't need to use it sparingly. Ning Shu, I'm back. Ning Shu was still cultivating when he vaguely heard Fa Tian's voice. He opened his eyes and saw Fa Tian jumping in front of him. Beside him was Jin Ji, who was stuffing things into his mouth with snot bubbles. Probably because of the appearance of their natural enemy, the sleeping Divine Stone clan members were all awakened one after another. When they woke up, they were all confused and shocked. If the Divine Stone clan had skin, they would be covered in goosebumps. What's going on? That brat is back again. Ah, why do I feel so cold? Ning Shu said happily, you guys are here. Why did you suddenly come back? Jin Ji was still so sallow and skinny. His small neck supported his big head. When he saw Ning Shu, he smiled, although the smile wasn't very nice. Fa Tian sat down. I found a good place, but it's very dangerous. Ning Shu said, wealth comes from danger. Things that were easy to get weren't so precious. Ning Shu asked, what did you find? Fa Tian said to Jin Ji, you tell him. Oh, okay. Jin Ji started to stutter. During this time, he wanted to stuff things into his mouth countless times, but Fa Tian looked at him, so he could only give up. He couldn't speak clearly. Plus, he wanted to eat, so he stuttered even more when he was anxious. The counterattack of the cannon fodder supporting female lead. Chapter 3982. Ning Shu looked at Jin Ji, who was drooling all over the floor. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't say anything clearly. Fa Tian looked at Jin Ji in disappointment. He said to Ning Shu, he's not like this usually. Fa Tian thought that Jin Ji had been taught well. At least, he was like a normal child, but he was still like this. Gaishan was like a parent who had asked his child to perform in front of his relatives. In the end, the child's performance was disappointing. As a relative, Ning Shu naturally had to praise him. Don't be too strict. After all, his situation is special. It's good enough that he didn't make a fuss and eat. But was that the main point? What did he discover? Fa Tian waved his hand. Jean Ji immediately heaved a sigh of relief and started stuffing food into his mouth. When Fa Tian looked over, he slowed down his chewing speed. He couldn't wolf down his food. He had to be elegant and calm. He had to eat well. Ning Shu was speechless. How did Fa Tian teach Jean Ji? However, Jean Ji now looked like a very greedy child. He wasn't as scary as before. He looked green and wanted to eat everything. He was much more pleasing to the eye now. Son, are they back? Outside the cave, Shan Yu asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu said, yes, they're back. Mother Shan exclaimed and her footsteps faded away. She obviously didn't want to go near the cave. Ning Shu asked, what happened to you guys? Fa Tian said, we found an abyss. There's something strange in the abyss. I think there's some living thing inside. Ning Shu waved his hand. Fa Tian, can we not court death? This kind of place was very dangerous at first glance. Fa Tian said, I sense the aura of an energy body outside. The aura inside is very mixed. There's death aura and life aura. Ning Shu hammered his palm. Of course we have to go there. How can we court death if we want to find out the truth? Fa Tian, you can go and take a look, but you can't go unprepared. Fa Tian explained the abyss to Ning Shu in detail. When the abyss trembled, there seemed to be a beast roaring inside. In any case, this abyss was very dangerous. Ning Shu listened carefully. Then he looked at Fa Tian and said, will it be harder to obtain those energy bodies than the ice mountain? There were powerful things inside, and the environment on the other side of the glacier was harsh. If they went to the abyss, they might encounter beast-like creatures inside. If it was an ordinary beast, it would be fine, but if it was some powerful beast, it would be a little difficult. Fa Tian said, more or less. Anyway, it's not easy. How's the reconstruction of your meridians going? Ning Shu sighed. It's alright. It's a bit slow now, but it should be faster in the future. When do you plan to go to the abyss? Fa Tian, why don't we wait for a while? It's indeed a bit difficult now. Ning Shu asked, can't we bring Jinji along? Jinji could rely on his teeth to defeat 60% of the races in the void. Fa Tian looked at Jinji. How can he look like on the battlefield now? Other than eating, that's all he can think about. Ning Shu shrugged. There was nothing he could do about it. He was born this way. Ning Shu asked Fa Tian, how's your strength now? Fa Tian, it's okay. I've been storing energy. It's about the same as before, but it's still not enough to go against the Grand Uncle. Ning Shu, I think the Grand Uncle has begun to suspect my identity and is testing me. Fa Tian raised his eyebrows. He looked a little surprised, but there was no fear. Why would they suspect you? I haven't even contacted you. At least they hadn't appeared in public. They hadn't appeared in front of the Grand Uncle organization. It stood to reason that they shouldn't be suspected. Ning Shu shook his head. I don't know. God knows why they would suspect me. They probably put some kind of mark on me. Fa Tian, your body has been rebuilt. Your previous soul has been annihilated. There's no mark on you. Fa Tian and Ning Shu thought about it. Anyway, they couldn't figure it out. Since they couldn't figure it out, they were too lazy to think about it. So what if they know? Now that I have the power to fight, I'm not very afraid. Fa Tian didn't care at all. Ning Shu looked at Fa Tian. Why do you still look like a child? She had been asleep for so long and had been born for so long. Fa Tian hadn't grown up yet. To be precise, Fa Tian hadn't grown much since he was born. Wasn't this growth period too long? Fa Tian. It lacks nutrition. Aren't you small too? Being called small, Fa Tian didn't feel good. He refuted her without thinking. Ning Shu, I'm still a cub. Are you still a cub now? Fa Tian didn't bother to talk to Ning Shu. Ning Shu began to prepare the things to go to the abyss. He couldn't go to the abyss unarmed. He had to take a look first. If his strength didn't allow it, then he would think about it later. Ning Shu found the God Stone clan. He found a large group of them locked together and tried to stay away from the cave. Whoever was in the cave was Jin Ji, so they stayed away from Jin Ji. Ning Shu told Shan Yu about the abyss and asked the God Stone clan for help. Of course, they didn't need to go the first time. Instead, Ning Shu and Fa Tian went to explore the depths. Ning Shu asked Shan Yu, "Do you know about this abyss?" Shan Yu shook his head. "The void is so big. There are many things I don't know. Also, there are many dangerous places. I don't recommend you go to dangerous places." Ning Shu also knew that Shan Yu was doing it for their own good. However, Fa Tian needed to grow and become stronger. In order to obtain this power, he had to take risks. "I'll go with you. As for the other clansmen, they're too big of a target. It's not suitable." Ning Shu smiled and nodded. "Thank you. I'll let you know when it's time to leave." Shan Yu hesitated and asked, "Is that cub going too?" The cub he was talking about was Jin Ji. Of course. He's now cultivating his personality. If we leave him alone, he'll immediately return to his original state. Shan Yu, I don't care about his personality. I just want to know if he's still biting her. After packing up, the four of them set off for the abyss. Along the way, Shan Yu was very worried that Jin Ji would bite him. When they approached the abyss, they bumped into a group of people. The scene was very quiet. The Grand Elder narrowed his eyes and looked at Ning Shu and Fa Tian. He was probably certain now. Previously, he had been suspicious. Now that he bumped into them, he was 100% sure. Fa Tian looked at the Grand Elder calmly as if he was a stranger. Ning Shu tilted his head and asked, "Grandpa, where are you going?" "We're going to the abyss." "Where are you going?" "If you're going to the abyss, we can go with you." The Cannon Fodder Girls counterattack. The Cannon Fodder Girls counterattack. Chapter 3983. Ning Shu invited Senior Uncle Taishu enthusiastically. "Grandpa, do you want to come with us? If something happens, we can take care of each other." She was like a good child, especially naive. The world was beautiful, and she was eager to help the old man cross the road to prove that she was a good child. She was eager to help people, and her whole body was shining. Fa Tian was speechless. Could it be that she was reborn, and her brain was also reborn? However, Fa Tian wouldn't embarrass Ning Shu in front of others, especially in front of enemies. Crunch, crunch. The sound of Jin Ji chewing was quite obvious in this quiet atmosphere. Senior Uncle Taishu looked at Jin Ji, who was like an African refugee, and then looked away at Ning Shu. "You were indeed reborn." Ning Shu smiled slightly. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Senior Uncle Taishu continued, "At that time, that world already had a strong vitality and initial power, enough to give birth to a person." Ning Shu was expressionless. Fa Tian frowned. In other words, Ning Shu's birth might have been expected by Senior Uncle Taishu. The only thing that was uncertain was what she would look like after being born. Now, it should be confirmed. After being reborn, she might have memories, or she might not. It all depended on the meaning of the place of birth. Ning Shu suddenly understood. Senior Uncle Taishu and the others didn't think that she had no memories. As a newly born creature, it was normal to have no memories. It was a brand new beginning. But she had memories. This was really fun. Ning Shu looked at Senior Uncle Taishu blankly. What are you talking about? I don't understand. What birth? I don't have memories. I don't have the past. Fa Tian covered Ning Shu's ears from behind. Don't listen to his nonsense. He's an old liar. Fa Tian understood what Ning Shu meant. He wanted to give the other party the wrong information, thinking that Ning Shu had no memories. Ning Shu turned to Fa Tian and asked, "What is this grandpa talking about? I don't understand." Fa Tian pursed his lips and comforted her, "You don't have to understand. Don't care what he says. Just don't believe him. You just have to trust me." The Grand Elder silently watched the self-directed performance of Ning Shu and Fa Tian. His face was indifferent, and no one could tell whether he believed it or not. However, Ning Shu didn't care whether he believed it or not. It was not a bad idea to indulge in acting. Anyway, Ning Shu was almost touched by her own acting skills and was addicted to it. As for whether the other party was touched or not, it didn't matter. It was fine as long as he was touched. Shan Yu suddenly understood. No wonder the granduncles always kidnapped the cub. There must be something in the cub's hands that made them itch. How shameless. Ning Shu said, "Since you're not going the same way as us, then goodbye." Ning Shu looked at Fa Tian innocently and asked, "Does this old man have some kind of illness? He's always so quiet and doesn't even answer my questions." Fa Tian pursed his lips and could only say, "Maybe." He was very sick. Sang Liang, who was next to the Grand Elder, stared at Ning Shu. His eyes were very penetrating. Ning Shu looked at Sang Liang and asked Fa Tian very ignorantly, "What's wrong with this gentleman? He stopped me before and kept talking to me. I didn't understand." Fa Tian said, "Just ignore him. That's enough." Ning Shu said, "Oh." With a bright smile on his face, he waved to the Grand Elder and Sang Liang. Again. The old men. She was innocent and naive, and especially cute as she attacked him personally. Shan Yu walked past them with heavy steps. After walking for a long time, Ning Shu felt that their eyes were quite sharp. Fa Tian said to Ning Shu, "How confident are you in escaping from them now?" He didn't ask how confident he was in winning, but how confident he was in escaping. From the moment he opened his mouth, he was at a disadvantage. There was a big gap in strength between the two sides. It wasn't rational to fight head-on. It was rational to not be angry or unwilling. He could only look at it objectively. Ning Shu pondered for a while and said, "There's a 50% chance. If we catch them off guard, we might be able to hurt them." With the strength in his arm, if he attacked them when they weren't prepared, the heavy blow would be too much for them to bear. At least he could make them feel pain. Fa Tian said, "When we have no choice, I'm afraid we'll throw Jinji to them and let Jinji bite them." Ning Shu. Was Jinji a weapon? Throw it over. Regardless of whether Jinji lived or died. Ning Shu nodded crazily. That's a good idea. Jinji's black face was full of question marks. What are you talking about? Of course, this didn't stop Jinji from eating. Her mouth never stopped. Although Taishu and the others brought pressure to Ning Shu, they didn't think of going back. There was no reason not to go to the abyss because of them. And looking at Taishu's direction, it seemed to be the abyss too. Ning Shu realized that Taishu and the others really had a dog's nose. Wherever there was good stuff, they would be there. Since Taishu had gone, they had to go too. They might be able to get some benefits by fishing in troubled waters. Even if they couldn't get any benefits, it would be good to go and cause trouble. She was happy to see that they were unhappy. Taishu's team was very fast. Soon, they would overtake Ning Shu's team. Ning Shu said innocently and cutely, "Are they sick? I asked them where they were going but they didn't tell me. Then they followed us." Fa Tian said, "Maybe they really are sick. Fatan wanted to vomit. Inside this small bag was an old woman. Don't pretend to be cute. Ning Shu greeted Tai Shu and the others. Grandpa, let's go together. Her expectant eyes were like an old man who needed to be helped across the road. She hoped that the world was peaceful and the world was beautiful. Tai Shu probably couldn't stand it. He looked at Ning Shu. Are you retarded? Ning Shu smiled. I am. It can't be cured. What's wrong with that? He didn't bother with her. He sped up and soon disappeared in front of them. Shan Yu asked, should we speed up too? Fatan wasn't in a hurry at all. Let's walk slowly. It's not like we can get something if we run fast. Shan Yu didn't want to get anything. He probably had no desires and didn't worry about gains and losses at all. Anyway, ordinary things, even the most precious things, were not rare to Shan Yu. Ning Shu and the others arrived at the abyss at a uniform speed. This abyss was very magnificent. The whole earth seemed to have been split open by a huge axe. It was dark and unfathomable below. Tai Shu and the others had already arrived and were standing beside the abyss. Ning Shu and the others walked over and poked their heads into the abyss below to take a look. It was dark and there was a whistling wind in their ears. The wind was mixed with roars. The wind brought out the movements of the creatures below. Chapter 3984. After such a long time, Ning Shu had not seen a living creature. After Shan Yu left, Ning Shu kicked the sand with his feet. There was a faint white color in the sand that reflected a faint fluorescent light under the light. Ning Shu grabbed the sand and played with it. The sand flowed out from between his fingers. Ning Shu was puzzled. If the Styx River was fixed, it would not ebb and flow. But what was with the sand on the beach? Generally speaking, sand was washed by seawater. The sand in the seawater would settle on the beach. Ning Shu ran to the side of the Styx River and made a mark. He could not see the Styx River moving with the naked eye, so he made a mark. If the sand was spat out by the Styx River, then it should be the remains after being corroded by the Styx River. In other words, the sand was also abnormally strong. It was not comparable to a large piece of Styx River stone, but its hardness was about the same as a Styx River stone. The sky darkened, and a strange aurora appeared in the sky. It shone on the Styx River, making people feel as if some demon was about to crawl out of the river. Shan Yu had been gone for a long time, which made Ning Shu a little worried. He could not help but light a fire. However, this kind of flame was dark blue, which made the environment even more gloomy. Ning Shu was not afraid. He was just worried that something had happened to Shan Yu. In the end, the aurora disappeared, but Shan Yu had not returned. Ning Shu could not sit still. He released his mental power and prepared to find Shan Yu. Shan Yu was tall and heavy, so it was not difficult to find him. All they had to do was to follow his footprints. Ning Shu held a stick in his hand and followed the footprints while shouting for Shan Yu. After walking for a long time, Ning Shu's throat was a little dry from shouting. Finally, he heard Shan Yu's voice. Ning Shu pushed aside the thick thorns and saw that half of Shan Yu's body was in the swamp. There was no way for him to get up. Shan Yu did not dare to move at all. He was too heavy. If he moved, he would sink faster. It was his fault for not paying attention and stepping into the swamp. Ning Shu found a big stick and put it in front of Shan Yu. He said loudly, "Hold the stick, I'll pull you up." Mountain remained motionless. "Don't. You can't move me." How could a cub that wasn't even the size of his finger pull him up? Not to mention his weight, the suction force of the swamp was very strong. Ning Shu said, "Stop talking nonsense. You're already up to your neck. If you keep sinking, you'll be buried." Shan Yu had no choice but to pull the big wooden stick. Ning Shu sank his chi into his dantian. His toes clenched tightly on the ground as he began to exert his strength. The mountain, however, did not dare to move. If it moved, it would sink even faster. It allowed Ning Shu to pull it up bit by bit. Ning Shu used a lot of strength, and the blood vessels in his body bulged, almost bursting. However, this kind of situation had to be done in one go. Otherwise, the mountain would soon be submerged by the swamp. Ning Shu used too much strength. When he pulled Shan Yu out, he was dizzy and sat on the ground. Shan Yu was covered in sticky swamp mud. Shan Yu looked at Ning Shu. "How can you be so strong?" Ning Shu waved his hand weakly. "I can't. My body can't take it if I use too much strength." Shan Yu immediately said, "You have to find a way to fix your body. Otherwise, you will always be weak in the future." Shan Yu felt that this child was so strong. The Divine Stone clan treated every day as their last day. Now, he thought that it would be good to have a few more days. Ning Shu said, "Didn't I find a way? Take it slow." The only thing that made Ning Shu uncomfortable was that in the small world, his strength was suppressed too much. He was no different from an ordinary person. If his body was fatally injured, he would really die in the small world. Without strength, there was no sense of security. In the past, he still had a soul, and he was using the body of the person who entrusted him. Shan Yu's body was covered in sticky swamp mud. This kind of mud had a foul smell, and when the wind blew, it would solidify on his body like cement. There was no water in this place, so Shan Yu returned to the Styx River with this kind of mud. However, Shan Yu didn't care too much. He usually piled stones and metals on his body, but now it was just some mud. However, Ning Shu couldn't stand it because the mud was too smelly. All kinds of things fell into it, including leaves and even some creatures that fell into the swamp, and were swallowed by the swamp. All kinds of things fermented in the mud, and one could imagine the smell. Ning Shu used too much strength and his body was weak. When he was hit by the deadly smell, he immediately became very fragile. Shan Yu's nose didn't seem to exist. He couldn't smell it at all. He kept leaning toward Ning Shu. Ning Shu shivered. "You are really too smelly. Don't come over. I will hit you. I will really hit you." Shan Yu raised his arm and smelled his armpit in an extremely indecent manner under Ning Shu's gaze. "It doesn't smell good. Ning Shu, help." Shan Yu saw that Ning Shu was really uncomfortable because of the smell, so he moved away from her. Bit by bit, he tried to remove the mud on his body, but the mud solidified on his body and couldn't be removed. When the mud was completely dry, Shan Yu found it difficult to even take a step. His body below his chest was covered in mud. Seeing him like this, Ning Shu endured the smell and went over to remove the mud. However, once the mud was dry, it was especially firm. Some sharp parts even cut Ning Shu's fingers. Shan Yu said, "If it wasn't for the inconvenience and the smell, I wouldn't have bothered. This thing's defense is quite high. Ning Shu, don't. This is too uncouth. It's too ferocious." Ning Shu was sweating profusely after removing the mud for a long time. He picked up a large stone and smashed it at the mud on Shan Yu's body, but sparks flew. It was obvious how strong the defense of this layer of mud was. Ning Shu's eyelids twitched. He said to Shan Yu, "Ordinary methods won't work. Why don't you try sticking your hand into the Styx River?" Shan Yu was shocked and shook his head reflexively. He looked very obedient. "Forget it. Although there's no water, I can't bathe in the Styx River." Moreover, Shan Yu and the others didn't bathe. Sometimes, they would wake up with a tree standing on top of them. As for moss, it was very normal. "Ning Shu, I'm not asking you to jump in directly. Just touch a little bit and see if the Styx River can corrode the mud on your body." Shan Yu felt that this method was better, but he still had to try. After all, it was a big problem for him to walk. Like a penguin, he moved to the edge of the Styx River with difficulty. Looking at the dark Styx River, he felt guilty and carefully stretched out his hand. He felt like he was on the verge of death. He was afraid. Chapter 3985. You can't just call me hungry, right? Ning Shu said to him, why don't I give you a name? We'll call you by your name in the future. You can call me Flower Honey. Ning Shu was still very cautious in front of the cub. If this cub made a fuss and shouted Ning Shu's name everywhere, wouldn't her identity be exposed? Although others might not care, she had to keep her cover well. The cub chewed on the jerky in his mouth and mumbled, Flower Honey. Ning Shu then introduced Fa Tian. Fa Tian shook his head at Ning Shu and said to the cub, I'm Sky Law. Ning Shu was confused. Sky Law. This name was intoxicating. He's called Shan Yu. After introducing everyone, Ning Shu asked, what name do you want to be called? The cub was very confused. I don't know. I'm so hungry. Ning Shu was speechless. Why don't I give you a name? Ning Shu asked. I'll definitely rack my brains to come up with a good name for you. The cub nodded. He didn't care about the name at all. Ning Shu thought hard for a long time. How about Jin Ji? Thinking of the name Xiao Ming in the past, this name sounded so much better. Fa Tian said, Jin Ji is a good name. Let's call him Jin Ji. Shan Yu said, although I don't really understand, this name sounds good. Ning Shu said to the cub who kept eating, from now on, you'll be called Jin Ji, understand? Jin Ji still looked confused. Even Shan Yu said, why do I feel like he's an idiot? There's a big difference between him and the two of you. Shan Yu never thought that it would be so difficult to take care of a cub. With this comparison, he praised Flower Honey again. Not only did he not make people worry, but he also gave them ideas and could even go into the river to touch stones. What kind of immortal cub was this? This Jin Ji really made one's head go bald. Along the way, he became more and more familiar with Jin Ji. At least he knew that the two words Jin Ji represented him. Once she called out Jin Ji's name, he would have a reaction. Moreover, he would restrain himself slightly when it came to eating, but only slightly. Strong instincts were not easy to control. This cub's instinct was to eat continuously. Fa Tian was slowly understanding Jin Ji's power. Everything Jin Ji ate seemed to turn into defensive power, giving him a very strong defensive power. The Divine Stone clan relied on piling up hard stones and metals to increase their defense, while the cub Jin Ji relied on eating to absorb energy. Although he was thin and weak, he seemed to have copper bones and iron skin. After eating so much, Jin Ji's face was still so yellow. His face was sallow and his body was emaciated. Could it be that he was going to be like this his entire life? This is a little ugly. Ning Shu preferred to stay with people who were more good-looking, and her mood would be happier. Especially Jin Ji's appearance, it was frightening. Not a single bit of flesh had grown. It was very frightening. Ning Shu felt that the skeletons in the world of reincarnation were more pleasing to the eye than Jin Ji. Skeletons were clearly white skeletons, but Jin Ji was different. He looked deformed. If he used food therapy, why didn't his condition improve after eating so much? Ning Shu was very worried about Jin Ji's appearance. Jin Ji was a veritable omnivore. He would eat anything in the entire void. He just didn't know if he would eat small worlds. But thinking about it, he even ate soil. It was normal for him to eat some leaves. Mountain said to Ning Shu, why don't we go to the lush forest? Ning Shu refused, the lush forest is too dangerous. Even if a new clan is born, we may encounter the Netherworld clan. Mountain said, I also want to find the sharp-eared person and ask him to give me some things. There are many people to feed now. With Jinji with a huge stomach, for his own life, he had to let this guy have something to eat. Once his mouth was empty, his eyes would fall on him and he would want to bite him. This cub was worthy of his name. He didn't give his mouth a day off. Not a day off, but a second off. Ning Shu thought of the nectar and various fruits that the sharp-eared person mentioned. The rich resources of the lush forest were very attractive. But the resources were rich, but the problem was that it was dangerous. Ning Shu looked at Fa Tian, are you going to the lush forest? Fa Tian's main point was, who is the sharp-eared person? Ning Shu, it's a bit troublesome to explain. It's a bit long. Fa Tian, I'm listening. Ning Shu, he had no choice but to explain the ins and outs of the matter. Fa Tian frowned, just based on a few words, you're going to find someone. Are you sure he will admit it? It doesn't matter if he doesn't admit it. Anyway, we're going to find a new clan. That place is rich in resources. There are quite a lot of cubs born there. Ning Shu looked at her baby, who looked like the reincarnation of a hungry ghost. We still have this trump card. Fa Tian glanced at Jinji, it's best not to count on him. Once we enter the lush forest, can you guarantee that we can come out? Ning Shu. I can't guarantee. Shan Yu. I can't guarantee. The ignorant Jinji didn't know what was going on. He repeated like a parrot, I can't guarantee. Fa Tian's expression became complicated, don't go. Safety is more important. Shan Yu, then where are we going? Fa Tian, we can't sense the energy waves. Let's go to the nearest place where the cubs are born. As for the lush forest, they could go there when they were stronger. Going there now was like going through the gates of hell. Shan Yu, alright. Shan Yu rushed to the place where the cubs were born. There were already many clans there. Seeing so many people waiting for the cubs to be born and wanting to kill the cubs, they probably hadn't been punished by the Netherworld race yet. It was probably because the Netherworld race wasn't famous yet. Plus, the Void was still in a primitive state with no technology at all. The news didn't spread quickly, and no one shared it on the internet. The Netherworld race hadn't been born for long. Even if they didn't stop to run to the place where the cubs were born, it would still take a long time. Shan Yu couldn't help but sigh, I'm traumatized by the cubs that are born now. He had witnessed the birth of the Netherworld race, who killed people like cutting melons. Or the birth of a cub like Jinji, who gnawed on the heavens and earth, who wasn't cute and normal at all. He didn't know what would be born this time. He wasn't looking forward to it at all. He was just afraid that it would be some weird-looking clan. His heart couldn't take it anymore. Shan Yu clutched his chest. He was getting old and had no future. Ning Shu looked at the surrounding environment. There were huge vines full of heavy fruits, and the vines were full of poisonous thorns. The cubs would probably be born from the fruits. Actually, this was very normal. Many clans were either born from flowers or fruits. These things that gave birth to them were just energy carriers. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.